Chapter 13:13. Fellow Taoist Lin, your cultivation is truly terrifying. Amongst those of the same generation, it's hard to find anyone who can compare to you. Bao Jiaming stepped forward. He had a smile on his face. Fellow Taoist Bao, you flatter me. Lin Yu cupped his fist. The inner world of the 10th level is truly a place that no one has ever seen before. Fellow Taoist Lin, you have a bright future ahead of you. Fu Lingyun said. How about we have a drink alone tonight? Fellow Taoist Lin, what do you think? Bao Jiaming invited. It was Bao Jiaming who had invited Lin Yu to the banquet earlier. But before that, Lin Yu had already predicted this outcome. Bao Jiaming was a little embarrassed. He felt that he was the one who had brought Lin Yu here, but things had turned out this way. If not for Lin Li's intervention, Lin Yu might have been suppressed by Wang Tianjun. Naturally, no problem, Lin Yu replied. Then, when the time comes, I'll apologize to fellow Taoist Lin. Bao Jiaming scratched his head and laughed. There's no need to apologize. Fellow Taoist Bao, please don't say that, Lin Yu said. The few of them returned to their residences for the time being. Lin Yu followed Lin Li to the courtyard as well. Seems like this gardening job is no longer suitable for me. Lin Li sat down on a rattan chair. He looked at the plants that had yet to sprout. The ancient city is gradually becoming less peaceful. There's not much time left. Lin Li sighed. I've caused trouble for you, senior, Lin Yu said. Lin Li shook his head. Even if you hadn't come, the ancient city would have been purged of some stubborn factions. His tone was filled with disappointment. Right now, there are already factions who wish to surrender in the ancient city. Right now, the ancient city is impregnable. Why would anyone wish to surrender? Lin Yu asked. Even though he had already heard from the mouth of the burial Tao Master that the utmost being had once been disappointed by the ancient history, but in that battle in the past, even though the utmost beings of the universe did not achieve a true victory, the strange beings must have suffered a huge blow. Otherwise, why hadn't the utmost beings been able to break through this place for such a long time? The unparalleled king of the bizarre race is about to awaken. As for the Genesis lands, which originate from the universe, there are no longer any unparalleled kings. This is merely the calm before the storm, Lin Li said. His eyes were filled with determination. He would not allow the land that the utmost beings had risked their lives to protect back then to be shrouded in darkness, even if it was a bottleneck life form. Are there no more utmost beings lying dormant in the secret ground? Lin Yu realized the severity of the situation right now. At that time, if the supreme king of the strange creatures revived, the ancient city might really fall. However, now that the founding emperor has returned, with the help of the secret area, it's possible that in the near future, he will be able to recover to his supremacy level, Lin Li said. This has caused some people to feel slightly shaken. The arrival of the first emperor was good news. Senior, do you know about the land of reincarnation in the first universe? Lin Yu asked. The first universe? Lin Li was reminiscing. Lin Yu nodded his head. Back then, Lin Zhigao and some other people had once established a place in the first universe. I think it must be the place you're talking about, Lin Li said. There are powerful beings who had once left their true spirits there. They are in the midst of reincarnation and should be able to awaken in this life. Therefore, the Great War has yet to reveal complete despair. Lin Yu explained to Lin Li. He had once stayed in the land of reincarnation for a period of time as well. Now that he thought about it, it should have been Lin Xian and some other top utmost beings who had joined forces to establish Earth, leaving behind hope for the future generations. However, that involved an extremely deep secret. Even Lin Li had never truly understood it. Lin Yu had lived on Earth for a period of time. It must have been because of his father who had learned of some secrets through the God King's token. That was why he had sent him there. Lin Li's eyes were filled with a resplendent glow. If that was the case, Perhaps there were still brothers of his from back then on Earth who could revive in the future. He steadied his state of mind. Back then, the founding emperor had already revived from Earth. Linley thought of the aura that was emanating from the founding emperor as well as the ancestor dragon who was by his side. He thought of the ancient history of the past. The founding emperor was once an utmost being as well. However, his title back then wasn't founding emperor. Instead, it was emperor by the people of the world, with the meaning of supremacy. He had once killed many utmost beings of the strange race. However, back then, the difference between the top utmost beings of the universe and the strange race was way too great. As such, there were many utmost beings who had to face off against many utmost beings of the strange race alone. In the end, they died in a bloodbath. Only a small number of people like the founding emperor had managed to carve out a path of blood before dying in the ancestral ground of the strange race. However, his battle strength back then was extremely shocking. It must be because of this that some utmost being had used his powers to send the true spirit of the founding emperor into the land of reincarnation. One secret after another came out of Linley's mouth. Lin Yu had never heard of this before. However, the more he understood about the ancient history, the more he could sense the despair of that battle back then. It was no wonder that Bai Xiaoli back then didn't want Lin Yu to know about these matters too early. What's hidden within the ancestral ground of the strange race? Lin Yu asked. Linley shook his head and said, back then, only Lin Zhigao and a few others were able to truly enter that place. However, after escaping with great difficulty, the utmost beings took away an item and were severely injured. Not long after, they disappeared and eventually fell. Lin Yu thought of the clay jar that he had on him. Could the true origin of the clay jar be that of the strange race's ancestral ground? Otherwise, what sort of item could his first ancestor and the other utmost beings have brought out? That place involves an ancient taboo. Other than the few utmost beings who have passed away, no one else knows what's inside. Linley's eyes were solemn. Back then, Lin Xian's battle strength was terrifying. He was the first to kill 5 utmost beings of the strange race and entered their ancestral ground. Everyone thought that they were about to obtain the final victory and suppress the strange race completely. However, Lin Xian and the other utmost beings who entered the ancestral ground later on suffered a tremendous backlash. There was an unimaginable terror within. Linley didn't know much about it. However, from his narration, he could tell how terrifying the strange race's ancestral ground was. One must know that back then, Lin Xian had grasped the Tao laws of time and space, and was on the verge of breaking through that final step. However, in the end, he still fell. For the sake of the safety of the later generations, he forcefully cut off a section of history. However, that item is the key to suppressing the strange race. Linley sighed. However, up till now, we haven't been able to find any traces of it. Lin Yu thought of the clay jar that he had in his possession. When Bai Xiaoli and the others mentioned the clay jar, their faces were extremely solemn. Before they came, Bai Xiaoli had warned them sternly that they must not let anyone know about the clay jar. Right now, Lin Yu was 50% sure that the clay jar was the item that his first ancestor and the others had risked their lives to bring out from the strange race's ancestral ground. Back then, the utmost beings had left behind many trump cards. In the final battle, they will all appear. Linley concluded. He was an ancient person who had managed to survive from before the ancient history. Therefore, he knew many secrets. However, it's a pity that some people have already lost their original intentions from back then. That's something that's worrying. Linley's eyes were filled with worry. Back then, when the 12 universes were at their peak, there were countless living beings. However, because of the arrival of the strange race, close to 90% of the living beings that had perished back then had yet to recover. It was extremely tragic. If this world couldn't defend against the strange race, that would be the true apocalypse. everything would be devoured by the strange race and reduced to nothingness. Chapter 13:14. But thankfully, the utmost beings of the past had left behind some methods that might appear in this world. However, it was far from enough to rely on the methods left behind by the utmost beings. After all, there were no longer any utmost beings in this world. Who could wield the methods left behind by the utmost beings? Thinking of this, Lin Yu felt that the road ahead was bleak. Where was the road to survival in the future? It was too strange and too powerful. Among them, there were countless top-notch, unparalleled kings. Based on what Lin Yu knew, there were more than 2 of them. And this was just the number of unparalleled kings hiding in the 12 universes. How many more were there in the true ancestral ground? It was unimaginable. He did not say anything else. Lin Yu steadied his mind for a long time. He knew that he did not have much time left. If it really came to that, even if he had the clay jar, it would not be of much use. He needed to rise quickly. Wang Tianjun, who was at the peak of the Tao realm, had already made him feel powerless. If a true utmost being were to descend, even his God King's token would not be of much use. Time passed. In the blink of an eye, it was already dusk. Lin Yu came to Bao Jianming's residence. It was a simple courtyard. There were a few stone tables and chairs in the house. There were no special decorations, but it gave off a feeling of simplicity. These stone tables and chairs gave off the aura of time. The origin was ancient. Lin Yu entered the courtyard. Bao Jianming, Fu Lingyun, and Bai Lu had been waiting for him for a long time. "I'm sorry for the delay due to the conversation with the senior." Lin Yu apologized and slowly cupped his hands in salute. "Not late, not late. It's not even the agreed time yet." Bao Jianming smiled. The wine and dishes were already prepared. With a wave of Bao Jianming's hand, rare delicacies were placed on the table. As the items were placed on the stone table, there was a misty, immortal mist on it. There were runes intertwining on it. Although it was not obvious, it was still eye-catching. This is a stone table made from heaven's stone. Back then, it was made by an utmost being for his son. After passing through many hands, it came to me. Bao Jianming introduced to Lin Yu. Lin Yu nodded. There was indeed a supreme aura emanating from it, giving off an unfathomable feeling. If that was truly the case, then the stone table and chair would not only be the furnishings of the courtyard, but also a great killing weapon. After all, it was personally crafted by an utmost being, and the runes on it interweaved, bearing the power of the great Tao. Lin Yu sat down. Bao Jianming poured wine for the 3 of them. After being affected by the aura of the stone table, the food here became more delicious. What was more surprising was that the food had the power of the great Tao, which was very pure and could strengthen the power of the principle of Tao in the original God realm. This feeling was extremely mystical. When Lin Yu was in the universe, he had never heard of such a godly object. This heavenly stone was born to carry the great Tao. Legend has it that in the era when the world was born, there was a stone that contained the great Tao. However, it disappeared in the end. The heavenly stone is just an ordinary stone that was affected by it, Bao Jianming continued. Evidently, he was extremely satisfied with his stone table and chair. His words were endless, and he understood the birth and experience of the stone table and chair. However, under the influence of that stone, coupled with the refinement of an utmost being, this stone table and chair is already extraordinary. I'm afraid it's no weaker than an utmost being. In fact, in some aspects it might even surpass it, Lin Yu said. The stone table and chair were extraordinary. However, Fu Lingyun and Lin Yu had clearly heard Bao Jianming talk about it so many times that their ears were about to grow calluses. Right now, they were just casually drinking. I wonder how long more such days can last? Bao Jianming sighed. His background were not ordinary. Therefore, he knew many secrets. Right now, he raised his cup to the moon with a melancholy look in his eyes. Let's enjoy ourselves while we can. Bai Lu was carefree. At this moment, her watery eyes were blinking, looking extremely cute. Even though she was a little tired of Bao Jiaming's explanation of the stone table and chair, she did not miss out on any of the delicacies and wine on it. While eating, Bai Lu's cheeks were puffed up, and her speech was unclear. Fellow Taoist Bao, are there many strange powers in the ancient city who wish to surrender? Lin Yu asked. Although he had already learned this from Linli had been too deeply asleep. However, Linli had been in a deep slumber for far too long. Perhaps in the present world, some subtle changes had occurred. When that time came, these people would become an enormous hidden danger that would endanger the safety of all living beings in the world. Indeed. Bao Jiaming nodded. Every 1,000 years, during the assembly, there will be many powers who wish to surrender to the darkness. As he spoke, Bao Jiaming was so angry that he crushed the jade cup in his hands. In the past, during that war in ancient history, when the strange creatures invaded the universe, so many ancestors and innocent living beings perished. Because of this, their true souls were destroyed, and no traces of their existence remained. But now there are actually people who wish to surrender to the darkness. The more Bao Jiaming spoke, the more agitated he became. In the end, he couldn't help but curse. Bastards who forget their roots. If I were strong enough, I would definitely slap each of them to death, and have their bodies forever kneel in the direction of their deceased ancestors. Their eyes were filled with resentment. Although they hadn't experienced that war, the origin of time was still affected by it. The influence of the river of time on the land of origin was relatively weak. Therefore, some people or ancient books had recorded bits and pieces of that war. Those who wish to surrender to the darkness, including us, are not qualified to forgive the strange creatures on behalf of our ancestors. The only thing we can do is fight to the death, to the death. Faced with this heavy topic, Fu Lingyun's eyes were filled with tears. His ancestor had died at the hands of the strange creatures, and his corpse had been refined into a weapon. Even now, it was still in the hands of the strange creatures. His true soul had been imprisoned, and he would suffer eternally. Bai Lu grew solemn as well, and she stopped what she was doing. Which powers wish to surrender? Lin Yu asked. He knew that there were a total of 9 powerful powers in the ancient city. The Wang clan was one of them. The ancient city was controlled by these 9 powers as well. Bao Jiaming shook his head. Given my experience, I am not qualified to participate in the assembly. However, the ancient city is cowardly and refuses to accept the challenge. Perhaps the Wang clan is one of them. Bao Jiaming mentioned the Wang clan. Although he had not participated in the assembly every 1,000 years, he knew some things. However, this is just a guess. There's no need to take it seriously. Bao Jiaming continued. The Wang clan was not wrong to do so. Currently, the powerful existences in the ancient city had fallen into a deep slumber, and the power of the ancient city had been weakened. Therefore, it was not a problem for the Wang clan to seal the ancient city and recuperate. It was also because of this that the Supreme King of the strange creatures had snuck into the universe. In the end, he was killed by Lin Yu with the clay jar. Lin Yu nodded. In this era, it was not a big problem to do so. After all, we are weak and can't carry the flag. Otherwise, we would have killed our way into the ancestral land of the strange creatures. Bao Jiaming sighed and drank a big mouthful of strong liquor. Now that the immortal graveyard outside the ancient city has appeared, I don't know what is inside. It is said that a supreme being had fallen there. Bao Jiaming's face turned solemn as he spoke. How shocking was the place where a supreme being had fallen. After the supreme being had passed away, although there were coffins left behind, according to Lin Yu's knowledge, there were no corpses of the supreme beings left behind in the coffins. There must be a huge secret within. Now that Bao Jiaming mentioned it, he could not help but wonder. Could there be a corpse of a supreme being in the origin ground? If that was the case, everyone in the ancient city would be in a frenzy. Chapter 13:15. Utmost Being? Back then, which utmost being fell there? Lin Yu asked. The utmost beings that existed back then weren't limited to the first-generation godly kings of the 12 universes. This was something that Lin Yu knew. Among them, there were many utmost beings that didn't even leave behind their names. It was extremely tragic. As such, in the later generations, no one paid their respects or remembered them. Now that news of an utmost being appearing in a lost ground, the entire ancient city was shaken. Right now, they were already making preparations to enter. However, the lost ground of immortals is located at the border between the ancient city and the strange beings. The strange beings have already found out about it. This was also one of the reasons why Bao Jianming was worried. There are utmost beings that are related to our ancestors. Even if the strange beings know about it, how can they give up on it? Lin Yu said. The strange beings could take over the bodies of others. Back then, the king of the strange beings that was killed by the stone sword wanted to borrow the strength of the utmost being of the 10th universe to recover to his peak state. If the strange beings were to obtain the corpse of the utmost being, not only would their ancestors be humiliated, but if the strange beings were to take over the corpse, another utmost being would be born. Therefore, right now, the ancient city was filled with anxiety. The key is that the current first emperor is also in a deep slumber. Right now, there are no more half-step utmost beings in the entire ancient city. When we enter the lost ground of immortals, who can fight against the strange beings? Bao Jianming fell into deep thought. No matter what, even if we have to wake up many old ancestor-level characters in advance, we can't let the corpse of the utmost being fall into the hands of the strange beings. Fu Lingyun said directly. Some of the pro-war faction are already preparing to wake up the old ancestor. Bai Lu said. In order to protect the corpse of the utmost being, they were willing to go to war with the strange beings. Is it going to start now? Lin Yu's eyes were deep. However, there wasn't a single trace of fear in them. This wasn't the first time that he had fought with the strange beings. He could level up in the midst of battle. However, this was something that couldn't be helped. At most, I'll just sacrifice this little life of mine. Fu Lingyun was resolute. As the first ancestor of all living beings, the utmost being was not to be humiliated. This was the consensus of Bao Jianming and the others. They discussed for a long time until the next morning. After Lin Yu had arrived at the origin ground, his body had started to transform. The principle of Tao in this place was primitive. After Lin Yu had broken through to the original God realm, the principle of Tao here was incomplete. Boom! At this moment, Sky City was shaken. Above the ancient city, a decree that was emitting a strange substance appeared. There was a supreme aura emanating from it. The strange substance condensed into ancient characters in the sky. A sinister wind blew. Even the source Great Tao was being polluted. At this moment, the experts in the ancient city had already arrived on top of the city walls. After seeing the words left on the ancient city, everyone's expression turned grave. Lin Yu appeared by Lin Li's side. Looking at the words reflected in the sky, Xiao Chen's expression was calm but also filled with worry. It seems that within the ranks of the freak race, there is already an unparalleled king who has begun to awaken. Lin Li said. Let's lead our people to participate in the discussion and discuss the matter of entering the lost grounds. Seeing this, some people's faces gradually turned gloomy. What's there to discuss? The lost grounds of the immortal is the place where the unparalleled king fell. It belongs to us. Now that the freak race is doing this, it's obviously humiliating us. We can't tolerate it. A white-haired old man said. At worst, we'll just fight. Someone's body was burning like an eternal furnace. His aura was incomparably terrifying. Some of the juniors behind him couldn't withstand the pressure and were forced to retreat. However, there were many people who were enraged. They shouted in agreement, ready to fight the freaks in the final battle. However, at this moment, someone scolded, "Can't you see that there is the aura of the Freak King on it? Now that the throne has begun to awaken, who in the ancient city can be a match for it? The person who had once stood on Wang Tianjuan's side said slowly. His words were like a bucket of cold water that was poured over everyone's heads. Everyone could clearly feel the terrifying aura emanating from the decree. Right now, it was like a huge rock pressing down on everyone's hearts. Bring out the ancestral artifact and we can fight. At this moment, another old man with a decaying aura said slowly. He had experienced countless years and was close to decaying. However, he still didn't back down in the face of the freak race's provocation. Now, he was actually asking people to go to the secret place to retrieve the ancestral artifact of his race. However, it's not like there's no way now. The old man pondered. Now that everyone was enraged, they couldn't care less anymore. As long as there was a way, everything was feasible. Wang Tianjun frowned. For a moment, she didn't understand the meaning of the Zhou family's leader. The Zhou family's leader pondered for a moment and didn't say anything. Ancestor Zhou, if you have something to say, just say it. Someone below revealed an anxious expression. However, some of the upper echelons were frowning. These things shouldn't be known to others. A meeting should be held. But now, the Zhou family's leader proposed a solution in front of everyone. There's only one way, and that is to borrow the paramount shroud on Lin Yu. The Zhou family's leader looked at Lin Yu with a melancholy look in his eyes. There's a paramount artifact in the ancient city, but it can't be revealed in advance. In the ancient city, perhaps only Lin Yu has something comparable to a paramount artifact. Only then will we be able to take the initiative in the discussion with the freak race. The Zhou family's leader continued. Everyone fell into silence. Some people wanted to say something but hesitated. Lin Yu, hand over the paramount shroud in your possession. For the sake of the ancient city and the future of all living beings, let's borrow it, someone said. That's right. Right now, only you have a paramount artifact. Everyone began to shout in agreement. Don't be selfish. In the end, there were already people who began to criticize Lin Yu. Lin Yu calmly looked at the scene. Until now, the Zhou family had not given up on the paramount artifact in their possession. Just now, you said to discuss? Lin Yu spoke, indifferently questioning the Zhou family's leader. Yes. The Zhou family's ancestor replied with his hands behind his back. Then I won't ask the paramount shroud to hand it over to you, Lin Yu directly replied. This response couldn't help but make everyone angry. Before they could start to criticize, Lin Yu continued, there's the corpse of the paramount artifact in the immortal graveyard. If the freak race wants to invade, then let's fight. What's there to discuss? Lin Yu stood on the spot. His posture was tall and straight, like a majestic divine mountain that couldn't be shaken. You said to bring the paramount artifact to discuss with the paramount artifact. Zhou family's leader, do you mean that there's still room for discussion? Lin Yu asked. Everyone was stunned on the spot. Lin Yu's words caused some people to suddenly come to their senses. They had been thinking about how to discuss the future when the sovereign of the freak race woke up. However, they had always forgotten that there might be the corpse of the paramount artifact in the immortal graveyard. They absolutely couldn't let it fall into the hands of the freak race. That would be a great humiliation for eternity. Lin Yu, could it be that you don't want to hand over the paramount artifact and are looking for some excuses? The Zhou family's leader clearly came prepared. If a war breaks out, I can hand over the paramount artifact for free and let the experts of the ancient city hold it, Lin Yu directly said. If you want to discuss it to intimidate them, then forgive me for being powerless. Such a selfish person. How disappointing. Someone mocked him from the side. The Zhou family's leader also shook his head repeatedly. Chapter 13:16. The current situation directly put Lin Yu in a situation of being unrighteous and unjust. Everyone looked at Lin Yu with disappointment. If you don't hand over the supreme shroud, please leave the ancient city, someone said directly. Lin Yu's face revealed a cold sneer. He looked at the leader of the Zhou clan and said directly, "If you use it to start a war, swear to the heavenly Tao, and I'll give it to you immediately. If you want to negotiate, please do as you wish." Then, he swept his gaze across the crowd and said, "Since you have no guts and have forgotten the deaths in the battle back then, this ancient city doesn't live up to its name. What's the harm in leaving?" Lin Yu's words shut everyone's mouth. There was no lack of guts among them. They looked at the leader of the Zhou clan and said, "Ancestor Zhou, that's all I have to say. With your cultivation at the peak of Tao realm, you can definitely unleash the full power of the shroud. It's just a strange throne that has just awakened. What's there to fear?" The leader of the Zhou clan's face couldn't help but darken. He only wanted Lin Yu to hand over the shroud. He didn't want to put himself in such a situation. It was hard to stop halfway. If he really had the shroud, he would definitely have to face the awakened strange throne in the battle. The strange throne corresponded to the Supreme Being. The power it had was unimaginable. Even a half-step utmost being would be nothing in the face of a king's seat, not worth mentioning at all. Even if he had the shroud, what were his chances of winning? It was probably very slim. The strength of the strange throne is unfathomable. Back then, it caused the Supreme Being to bleed. If it's just the shroud, it won't be enough to fight it. Doesn't Lin Yu have the other supreme weapon of his first ancestor? Why don't you hand it over? The leader of the Zhou clan said again. He expected that Lin Yu would definitely not hand over the supreme weapon of his first ancestor. After all, he relied on this item to rise to power. This was his first ancestor's relic. As long as he didn't hand it over, the first ancestor of the Zhou clan would have an excuse. "All right," Lin Yu nodded and said, "Swear to the heavenly Tao now. We will start the war immediately." Lin Yu looked at the leader of the Zhou clan without hesitation. Even some of the people who had spoken rudely earlier were slightly moved by his magnanimity. Bao Jianming came to Lin Yu's side, wanting to stop him. After all, if he handed over the two items, it was impossible for him to return them. At that time, it would belong to the Zhou family. The leader of the Zhou family was caught in a dilemma. He didn't have the courage to fight, but now he was in a difficult position. Some people saw this point. If they continued to argue in front of everyone, there would be no result. It would only affect the rule of the upper echelons and affect their prestige. Immediately convene a meeting to discuss this matter. An old man with white hair and a ruddy complexion said. At this moment, the vast universe pavilion's pavilion master spoke up and stopped the confrontation between the two of them. The Zhou family head scoffed coldly. The group of higher-ups entered the secret place and began to discuss the matters of the immortal graveyard. Everyone, including Lin Li, entered the secret place. Lin Yu also participated because he had the key item, the shroud. They arrived at a damaged palace in the secret place. The aura of the great Tao surrounded this place, vast and unfathomable. Lin Yu saw Tian Yi, who was sitting cross-legged. He was of the same generation as Lin Yu. At this moment, he was also attending this meeting. Furthermore, many people treated Tian Yi with respect. The vast universe pavilion's pavilion master even addressed Tian Yi as little ancestor. The relationship between them couldn't help but arouse curiosity. This matter is of great importance. What do you all think? The vast universe pavilion's pavilion master said slowly. The strange world's throne has already begun to awaken. I think it's better for us to negotiate. In any case, the corpse of the utmost being must be with us. We can give up on the rest. One of the leaders of the 9 major forces said. Do you think they will agree? I think the goal of the strange world is to obtain the corpse of our utmost being in the immortal graveyard. A burly old man with long hair and beard from the sword sect said directly, Why don't we just start the war directly? So what if we use some of our trump cards? We shouldn't be afraid of battle. I'm afraid that even if we use all of our resources, and even if we add in the 2 supreme items that Lin Yu has, it'll still be difficult for us to deal with that bizarre throne. Someone spoke out, voicing the worry in their hearts. With the utmost treasures, maybe we can try, someone said. However, there was uncertainty in his words. They had never faced the strange world's thrones head-on. Don't forget that we have utmost treasures. How can the strange world's race not have king weapons? The leader of the Netherworld sect said, frowning deeply. Moreover, in the strange world, there are more than 10 sovereigns and quasi-kings. He continued. Although it was a blow to the morale, it wasn't without reason. You all have been hiding for too long, so you don't dare to fight now. The old man from the sword sect said, why can't we wake up some of the elders in the secret place? Even if we can't completely suppress the strange world, we will definitely hurt their vitality. Everyone fell into silence. How many times have we retreated? The first 8 ancient cities have already fallen, and countless lives have fallen. Isn't that enough? The leader of the sword sect questioned. The immortal legacy has the corpses of the utmost beings. If we give up, won't we disappoint them and humiliate the utmost beings? Every word was powerful and resonant, exploding in everyone's hearts. Just as the situation was getting more and more anxious, Tian Yi opened his mouth and said, it's true that we can't rush for success. If we continue to hide, we will only lose our courage. So, we can find a compromise and bring the utmost treasures to discuss. If the strange world's race is overbearing, we will fight them directly. Tian Yi's words carried a lot of weight. His identity was very mysterious. Even though he was only in the original God realm, the leaders of the various forces did not dare to object. This was a very good idea. After all, in the war before the ancient history, their forces had been reduced to less than 1/10 of their original strength. All the utmost beings had fallen. As for the throne of the strange world, it had fallen into hibernation. However, the current ancient city was already struggling at death's door. If not for the fact that there was another newly built ancient city with countless powerful beings, the ancient city would have fallen. Perhaps this city would have fallen long ago. This idea can work. The leader of the sword sect nodded his head and said, I'll go retrieve the ancestral weapon of my sword sect immediately. No need. Tian Yi said calmly. With a wave of his sleeves, a utmost treasure appeared in the void. It was filled with chaos chi intertwining with the wisdom of the heavens and earth. Heaven refining gourd. Everyone was surprised. To think that Tian Yi would take out the utmost treasure that he possessed. As the leader of the ancient city, I'll go. Wang Tianjun took over the heaven refining gourd and said slowly. But this utmost treasure, I'm afraid. The leader of the Zhou family muttered. Old senior of the sword sect, take the burial cloth. Lin Yu took out the utmost treasure and handed it over to the leader of the sword sect. At this moment, the face of the leader of the Zhou family clearly turned gloomy. The leader of the sword sect took the burial cloth and put it away solemnly. He said, All right, I'm only borrowing it temporarily. I'll return it to you after we return. The utmost treasure of the sword sect was used to suppress their foundation. It was the most important item in the final war. If they were to touch it now, there would be a huge hidden danger. Now that we have 2 utmost treasures, there shouldn't be any problems. Tian Yi nodded his head at Lin Yu. Chapter 13-17. The leader of the sword sect and Wang Tianjun immediately stepped onto the border that led to the ancient city of the strange race. Atop the city walls, one could clearly sense the heart-shaking, boundless black aura in the distance. It was like a canopy that covered the heavens and the earth, constantly expanding. This was a sign that the thrones of the strange race were awakening. Some people began to worry for the 2. Although the border wasn't too far away from the 2 sides, if a major battle really did erupt, they would only be able to awaken the slumbering patriarch of the ancient city. Soul Sky had already made his preparations. Right now, the upper echelons of the ancient city were all standing atop the city walls, waiting for the results of the negotiations. In the blink of an eye, 7 days passed. No one left. Everyone within the ancient city had made their preparations for battle. Lin Yu's warsword hummed, and a gentle wind ruffled his clothes. He had already informed Lin Yu of his will. If the battle truly began, it would most likely be his final battle. Solsky looked at Linley as well. He seemed to know that Linley still had hidden techniques that could pose a threat to thrones. This was one of the reasons why Solsky dared to fight. As time went on, the black fog at the ends of the horizon suddenly began to move. Everyone's eyes were glued to the front. The aura of the thrones had affected this place, causing all of the primordial Grand Daos to retreat. However, nothing had happened to the life tablets of Wang Tianjun and the others. A month passed. Far away from the ancient city, 2 blazing auras appeared. They wielded Supreme Being artifacts. At the peak of the Tao realm, they were able to unleash the full power of Supreme Being artifact. Right now, the 2 were like primordial suns, their auras imposing. Wang Tianjun and the leader of the Sword Sect had returned. However, the looks on their faces were extremely ugly. How did it go? The leader of the Zhou clan went forward and asked. He frowned, not knowing what had happened. However, upon seeing Wang Tianjun and the leader return safely, they all let out sighs of relief. But then, their faces turned solemn. They were waiting for the results of the negotiations. Wang Tianjun shook his head. As for the leader of the Sword Sect, after returning the shroud to Lin Yu, he didn't even look back as he entered the depths of the secret area, no longer caring about anything else. What happened? The Lord of the Azure Universe Pavilion asked. Within the strange race, more than one throne has awakened. Wang Tianjun sighed slowly. What? More than one king-level expert has awakened. Many people were shocked. Then what about you? Someone couldn't help but ask. More than one sovereign had been revived. This news was undoubtedly despairing. What's the result? This was what everyone was paying attention to. Indeed, more than one sovereign has awakened. There is no need to be too worried. Tian-Yi was calm and collected. No one doubted his words. We have signed a contract to let the younger generation fight for the immortal graveyard, Wang Tianjun said. This was a very good idea. Merely, they did not know why the strange clan, since more than one sovereign had awakened, would remain so quiet and not attack the final ancient city. Everyone could not help but shift their gazes to Tian-Yi. Tian-Yi had a great secret. Perhaps only Tian-Yi knew the reason why the strange creatures did not dare to attack the ancient city for the time being. Our next generation of geniuses is full of geniuses. I don't think we need to fear the strange tribe at all, Wang Tianjun said solemnly. Especially after considering Tian-Yi, he felt that Gu Qing would not be at a disadvantage in the battle between the younger generation. We have great expectations for the younger generation. Could this be a conspiracy of the strange creatures? Someone asked suspiciously. If the strange creatures attacked the younger generation and all of them died in the immortal graveyard, Gu Qing would be completely finished. It would cause a gap in their strength. It would be difficult to recover in the next few 100,000 years. It was not that Wang Tianjun had not considered this problem. Hence, when he returned, his expression was solemn. He wanted to hear everyone's opinions. However, they could not give up on the immortal graveyard. There was the corpse of a supreme being inside. Gu Qing was in a dilemma. You can say that, Tian-Yi replied. The sovereign of the strange creatures is not in a good state right now. He does not dare to attack Gu Qing. He might not even be able to leave the ancestral land. He can only reflect his body. Tian-Yi guessed many things. However, the immortal graveyard was not in Gu Qing. It would be difficult to protect it. If Gu Qing went all out, they might not have much of a chance of winning in a situation where the ancestors were still in hibernation. Letting the younger generation take action now was the best choice for Gu Qing. After careful consideration, they finally decided to let the younger generation enter the immortal graveyard in half a month to fight for the corpse of the Supreme Being. The immortal graveyard might not be a place where the Supreme Being's corpse and Tao laws evolved after his death. It might have existed since ancient times. There are endless fortunes hidden there. It might be a shortcut to help you break through quickly, Wang Tianjun explained to the people who were fighting for the immortal graveyard. However, that is secondary. What's important is those people from the strange race. If you can kill them, then kill them all. Of course, you must ensure your own safety, Wang Tianjun said slowly. In the face of righteousness, Wang Tianjun maintained his magnanimity. Lin Yu was also invited to participate. This time, the battle for the immortal graveyard was limited to the original God realm. There were less than 100 people in the entire Gucheng. These people were all terrifyingly talented. There were no less than 10 people who had condensed 9 layers of their inner world. Some were urgently awakened from a secret place. Some of them were even more powerful than Wang Chuan. This was Lin Yu's perception. Half a month passed quickly. Lin Yu bid farewell to Linli in the courtyard. It's a good thing to be able to make contact with the strange creatures in advance. Linli nodded. He didn't give Lin Yu any life-saving measures. He just gave him a warning. Lin Yu didn't say that he had already killed a throne of the strange creatures who had yet to recover. He just nodded. The methods of the strange creatures are unpredictable. In battle, you have to be incomparably careful, especially those with royal bloodlines. They have innate divine abilities and are innately powerful. You can't underestimate them. Although you have condensed 10 layers of your inner worlds, most likely the geniuses of the strange creature's royal bloodline also have such existences. Linli's face was very solemn. In the past, when he had participated in that historical war, he had encountered such existences as well. Even now, he still felt some lingering fear. The strange creature's cultivation system was different from that of the universe, but there was no need to doubt the power of the strange creatures. This could be seen from how many thrones they had in the past. Lin Yu nodded. Only now did he know that the strange creatures had bloodline legacies. In the past, he had always believed that the strange creatures were born from strange substances and were nurtured by the universe. Every single one of them was an independent entity that could devour each other. The true strange creatures are actually no different from living creatures. Only, the strange creatures are extremely terrifying existences. Linli explained. On your way here, I imagine you must have encountered those indescribable strange creatures. Linli explained, those are actually the experts of the universe who were corrupted by the dark creatures. In the end, they were devoured by the dark creatures and became members of the strange creatures. This was the first time Lin Yu had heard of such a thing. He couldn't help but frown. In the Genesis lands, there were trillions upon trillions of these strange creatures. If all of them were transformed from living creatures, then how terrifying would their numbers be? Chapter 13-18. After learning more about the strange creatures from Linli, the day of the battle for the immortal graveyard had arrived. The group arrived at the city gates. War drums made from the skin of Tao channeling realm beasts rang out, sending the group off. At this point, the upper echelons of Heavenly Lord Wang no longer warned them. Following the beating of the war drums, the city gates opened wide. Those who participated in the battle went out of the city gate. With Tian-Yi leading the group gradually disappeared from the ancient city. The immortal graveyard was located at the border between the strange creatures and the ancient city. It was a lost land, and the great Tao had already been destroyed in the battle in ancient history. The sky was tilting. The group spent a few days to reach this place. Now, the keys to the immortal graveyard were held by the strange creatures and the ancient city respectively. Seeing that the strange creatures had yet to arrive, the group sat down cross-legged and began to rest. They had already adjusted their cultivation to their peak state, and were ready to fight at any time. 2 days passed by from the endless black fog. A group of people gradually walked out. Their bodies emitted a strange aura that was incomparably solid. Their faces were pale, and they were no different from ordinary living beings. Among these strange living beings, a few of them were direct descendants of the strange creature's royal family. Their auras were extremely powerful. Vaguely, they gave off a sense of oppression. The person in the lead was dressed in black armor. His right shoulder was flowing with sleeves, and his face was calm and resolute. The person on the other side was dressed in green. He had a heroic figure, but there was something strange about him. It seems like I'm still not used to this body. The green-robed man had a smile on his face. Everyone in the ancient city sensed a familiar aura from the green-robed man. The physical body of Senior and Tianshu, who was at the peak of the half-step utmost being back then. Everyone in the ancient city revealed a furious expression. This was a Senior from 1,000,000 years ago. Back then, he was about to break through to the utmost being level. However, due to the invasion of the strange creatures, he died and was taken away by the strange creatures. Now, he was taken over by the royal family of the strange creatures. However, the potential of this physical body is truly huge. I wonder if I can get a few more from you guys. The green-robed man looked at Tian-Yi with a hint of provocation. The smell of gunpowder was thick. Before they even entered the immortal graveyard, a battle was already prepared. Let me kill him. Someone in the ancient city stepped out. However, he was stopped by Tian-Yi. Since everyone is here, let's enter the Forgotten Grounds, Tian-Yi said. This generation of people from the strange tribe was extremely powerful. A few of them were no weaker than the azure-robed man. Now that he had fused within Tianshu's body, he possessed limitless potential. If he used it well, he might even become an utmost being. But at this moment, among the powerful auras, there was a figure that attracted everyone's attention. Although there was a strange aura on his body, he was no different from an ordinary living being. There was something about him that seemed to contain stars. As he opened and closed, stars would be born and destroyed. Are you Tian-Yi? He calmly said, I've heard about you from the ancestor. I'm looking forward to fighting you. Traitor! Someone said angrily. This was the history that was recorded in the ancient city. Back in the ancient history, there was an utmost being who had survived a great battle back then. Possessing the Tao of the stars, he chose to side with the sinister existences. As for this person, it was obvious that he was a descendant of that person. A mere speck of sand dares to disrespect our royal bloodline? Someone from the strange tribe scolded. Why, you're just a traitor. Are you feeling guilty? Bao Jiaming could not help but scold as well. The destruction of the universe has long been a foregone conclusion. My ancestor was merely judging the situation. Unlike you guys who are stubborn. Chun Chun said indifferently, furthermore, I grew up in the Ming region since I was young. I'm from there to begin with. The strange tribe had always referred to themselves as the Ming tribe. As for Chun Chun, he had long belonged there. He replied indifferently. Hearing Chun Chen's words, everyone was infuriated. If the utmost being of the stars back then had not chosen to side with the sinister existences, their situation would undoubtedly be much better. But it was all too late to say anything now. The hatred between the living beings and the strange tribe had long been set in stone since the ancient history. It was indelible. Everyone in the ancient city was glaring at the mysterious tribe with hatred in their eyes. They were all mentally prepared. Once they entered the Forgotten Grounds, they would not rest until they were dead. Even though their era was in a state of quietness and they had not fought against the strange tribe, their blood was still boiling. This was especially so when the physical body of Tianshu, who was about to break through to the utmost being level back then, and the bloodline of the traitor utmost being were all here. The killing intent in everyone's eyes intensified. From the beginning till the end, the leader of the strange tribe did not utter a single word. His hair was disheveled and his eyes were dim. Lin Yu could not help but glance at him. This person was definitely strong. Perhaps it was because ever since Lin Yu started cultivating, he had never seen anyone who could give him such pressure in the same cultivation realm. The leader of the strange tribe seemed to have sensed that Lin Yu was not ordinary. At this moment, he looked over at Lin Yu. It was just a quick glance, but it was enough to pave the way for the upcoming battle. Tian-Yi and the leader of the strange tribe took out the mysterious key. As they injected their powers, the seals of the forgotten grounds of the immortal graveyard gradually appeared. This was not a man-made seal, but one that had existed since ancient times. Therefore, it contained many mysteries. Without the key, only an utmost being could open this place. 2 passageways, one black and one white, appeared in front of them. Without hesitation, everyone stepped into the passageway. Light flashed. Before entering the passageway, the leader of the strange tribe looked at Lin Yu and said, "My name is Ming Qintian." To have the guts to use the name of the strange tribe as his surname and name, this man was bold. Lin Yu. Lin Yu's face was calm. The battle between him and the strange tribe was inevitable. Even if he was facing the elites of the strange tribe, he was still not afraid. The 2 of them were the last to step into the passageway. As the 2 of them stepped in, the passageway began to close. However, it did not cross paths with the strange tribe as they had expected. The 2 groups entered different places. The forgotten grounds of the immortal graveyard was different from the barren land of the origin grounds. This place was full of vitality, and there were ancient plants growing. Delicate and beautiful flowers that were bigger than houses grew on top of ancient trees, replacing the branches and leaves. Ancient vines that emitted a divine golden glow. Everything seemed so mysterious. An item appeared in Tian-Yi's hand. The bronze compass spun and pointed in a direction. This was the purpose of their trip this time. It was to bring back the corpse of the utmost being. Be careful. The environment here is not as simple as you think. Tian-Yi reminded. He walked in front, guiding the way for everyone. Even so, there were still people who were in trouble. Their bodies were entangled by red vines, and they were being dragged into an underground cave. What was frightening was that the vines could make a person lose their strength. It made one unable to struggle. In the end, the few of them worked together to cut off the vines. They could not help but be shocked. Those who entered the forgotten grounds were already in the original God realm, and they could sense the Tao of heaven and earth. But now that he was here, he was just like a weak cultivator. Chapter 13-19. There were many mysterious changes happening here. In just a few hours, 2 people had already perished in there. They were the elites of their generation in the ancient city. Who would have thought that they would encounter such a calamity before even encountering the anomalies? Many people felt that it was a pity. The person who was saved earlier was secretly rejoicing. In the subsequent encounter, the 2 of them were stung by poisonous bees the size of a fingernail. Their bodies, including their divine senses, were corroded and turned into pus. Not even their bones were left. This caused everyone to slow down a lot and move forward cautiously. Tian-Yi had eliminated many threats in front of them. However, he was only an original God realm cultivator. No matter how strong he was, there would be a time when he would be exhausted in the forgotten lands. He followed the crowd as they flowed across a large river. Lotus flowers bloomed on the shore, spitting out stamens. A terrifying thing happened. Those stamens were actually humanoid creatures. Their bodies were like immortals, but their faces were extremely ferocious. Their mouths were cracked all the way to their ears. They were only the size of a thumb, but their bodies were covered in immortal mist that could corrode everything. Retreat! Tian-Yi raised his hand. A talisman turned into a small boat and carried everyone. Now, those stamens were spitting out in uncountable numbers, directly attacking the crowd. Above this large river, there was an extremely strong restrictive force. Cultivators could not fly because their cultivation was suppressed. At this moment, everyone was in an extremely dangerous situation. Lin Yu also held the stone sword in his hand. With a swing of the sword, a large number of stamens were turned into powder and scattered in the air. However, the powder that was turned into powder also contained a terrifying poison. This poison was capable of corroding one's source energy. Soon, someone felt weak. "Lin Yu, what are you doing?" someone questioned. "If Tian-yi makes a move, don't meddle," someone said coldly as he looked at the person beside him who had fallen. Lin Yu only glanced at them coldly. "Alright, you guys said it." Lin Yu turned around and went to the side. He only defended the area beside him. The stamens here were being born endlessly. Now, even if Tian-yi used a wisp of primal chaos flame, it was still difficult for him to completely remove the strange poison in the stamens. Now, more and more people were suffering. Bao Jianming, Fu Lingyun, and Bai Lu also came to Lin Yu's side. Together, they used their trump cards. Lin Yu released a strand of supreme power from the stone sword, completely dispelling the poison in the surroundings. Lin Yu was prepared to use its power just now. It was just that those people didn't know what was good for them and mocked him. There was no need for him to protect these people anymore. The scene fell into chaos for a while. Feeling the danger of this place, everyone thought of joining forces to resist, but everything seemed to be too late. Many people had already fallen unconscious. Although Tian-yi's primal chaos flame could burn the stamen to ashes, the poison on it seemed to have mutated. Some people began to attack each other as if they were caught in an illusion. Those who were still clear-headed felt their scalps go numb. If this continued, the people of Ancient City would suffer great losses. Tian-yi could not help but frown slightly. They saw that Lin Yu's current means seemed to be able to resist the strange poison. Among those who spoke, some had already lost consciousness. Although some remained clear-headed, they were filled with regret. "Lin Yu, are you going to watch us die without doing anything?" that person shouted. "Weren't you the ones who told me to stay away?" Lin Yu said coldly. Lin Yu had never felt pity for others. Their life and death had nothing to do with him, especially those who did not know what was good for them. He was just saving the ingrates. Now, more and more people were losing consciousness. Only a few people were still bitterly holding on. The Heaven Refining Flask was also a supreme item that was suppressed in the secret ground. It could not leave Ancient City for a long time. Therefore, Tian-yi did not bring it out. "Brother Lin, please save them." Tian-yi, thank you." Tian-yi's primal chaos flame had already become extremely weak. It swayed and was about to be extinguished. He could guarantee his own clear-headedness, but he could not do anything for the others. Tian-yi is actually asking for help. Bao Jianming was stunned. Clearly, he was shocked by Tian-yi's words. Fu Lingyun and Tian-yi's expressions were strange. It was as if Tian-yi's words were unprecedented. Lin Yu looked at Tian-yi indifferently. Although he did not have much interaction with Tian-yi, Lin Yu had a sense of admiration for Tian-yi's boldness. Moreover, Tian-yi was now the leader of Ancient City. Lin Yu did not refuse. He just casually struck. When the stone sword destroyed the stamen, one could see that the lotus flower on the shore in the distance was also beginning to shatter. This was the special characteristic of the stone sword. It could cut off the Tao fruit and origin of others through space. Even this strange lotus flower was no exception. As the lotus flower was reduced to dust, the immortal mist drifted downstream with the river wind. The people who were lost here gradually began to wake up. Their eyes were dazed. With the exception of a few powerful cultivators, almost everyone here was lost. If not for Lin Yu's quasi-supreme weapon, perhaps more than half of the people in Ancient City would have died here. However, after reaching this place, there were still some people who had yet to make a move. They were still observing. Their eyes were indifferent, and their bodies exuded powerful auras. It was as if apart from the strange tribe, there was nothing that could move them. One of the women had a veil covering her face. There seemed to be a layer of mist on her face, making it difficult to see clearly. Another person had blood energy circling around him like a dragon. His aura was as if he could fight a true dragon. Another man in white was the eldest senior brother of Sword Sect. His name was Zheng Hufeng. His body was like the strongest immortal sword, hibernating in its scabbard. There was also Wang Chuan. He was the only one who had not fallen into disorientation. The rest, whether deep or shallow, were all affected. Everyone was a little embarrassed. However, as they went deeper, they already understood the horror of this place. Hence, they all became cautious. Those who were saved by Lin Yu did not go up to thank him. That was because, in their impression, coming from the universal cage meant that his status was lower than theirs. Even if they were saved by him, it was not worth going up to thank him. Those people are really a bunch of ingrates. Bai Lu was a little displeased. Lin Yu did not mind at all. This time around, he did not help them. It was because of Tian Yi's request. He was just giving Tian Yi some face. Everyone continued forward. Passing through the forest, they arrived at a swamp. The compass in Tian Yi's hand started vibrating wildly, and the needle on it shook. Could we be close to the fallen ground of the utmost being? Everyone's gazes could not help but turn serious. Before they got close, it was already so dangerous. Now that they were close to the fallen ground of the utmost being, what other horrifying existences were there? Everyone had no idea. They could only feel uneasy and wary of their surroundings. We're not close. We're just being disturbed by this place, Tian Yi said slowly. A stream of chaotic light appeared in Tian Yi's gaze, illuminating the swamp's entire appearance. One could see that in the middle of the swamp there was a coffin. However, it was already tattered and did not have any trace of divinity. It looked like it was only a few hundred years old. Chapter 13:20. This was not the coffin of an utmost being from a long time ago. However, the aura it exuded was extremely strong. At the very least, it was not something an original God realm cultivator could compare to. What kind of living being is buried in the coffin? Because of Tian Yi's method, everyone could see the scene in the swamp. There was a faint intimidating aura on it, causing everyone's expression to become extremely solemn. But now, since it was not an utmost being, there was no need to enter. Just as everyone was about to leave, the owner of the coffin seemed to have sensed everyone's probing. Rumble, the coffin shook violently, and the mud in the swamp started to roll. Like waves, it swept out in all directions. Because of the coffin's existence, runes were engraved on the mud, filling every speck of dust. Everyone was moving backwards. One could see that at every intersection point between the runes, there were densely packed insects that resembled withered tree branches. They were gnawing on the runes to strengthen themselves. Now they could clearly feel that the power of the runes was definitely not just at the original God realm. And these insects actually had the ability to devour runes and refine them into their own bodies, turning them into nourishment. This was undoubtedly terrifying. These insects were not strong. But after being nurtured by the runes for many years, under the hard shell that looked like withered tree branches, they were constantly flapping their wings. It was as though the arrival of Gu Cheng's group had affected the environment and angered them. It was like a locust swarm had passed through. The insects appeared in the sky and on the ground, covering everything. The light in the world no longer existed. This place was plunged into darkness. Gu Cheng's group had already distanced themselves from the swamp. But the insects had already locked onto their position and were moving forward. As they passed by, the grass, trees, soil, and stones were all devoured. The insects were endless, spreading out like a tide. And their speed was extremely fast. In just a few blinks of an eye, they had covered the entire area. Everyone was retreating continuously. But at this moment there was a sudden change. "Don't retreat any further." Wang Chuan's face was cold as he looked behind him. They were at the peak of a small mountain. There were insects attacking them from all directions. The mysterious power of the runes on their bodies was similar. Is there a coffin in the swamp? Everyone thought of this possibility. Otherwise, why would they be so fast? They were already surrounded. The mountain stream in front of them confirmed their thoughts. Under the waterfall above them, the water was constantly washing a coffin. Destroy the coffin, and everything will naturally be solved, Zheng Hufeng suggested. We each take one side. After saying that, he condensed a long sword in his sleeve. The sword light flashed for 8,000 miles, and with a sweep of the sword, a large number of insects were turned into dust. Now that everyone in Ancient City was in a dangerous situation, they had no choice but to take action. Zheng Hufeng's attack left a deep ravine in the ground. Huge rocks kept rolling down and a large number of worms were sucked into the ravine. At the same time, the other two also attacked. One of them used his physical body to cast the mountain-embracing seal. Patterns of birds and beasts appeared on it, and it crashed down in another direction. Countless bugs died. With just one blow, the two of them managed to stop a bug. However, this was not the end. Wang Chuan, the woman, and Tian Yi all used their own method. Tian Yi's eyes shone brightly again as he found the locations of the coffins in several places. There were a total of 7. Tian Yi looked at Lin Yu and Bao Jiaming, indicating that he would leave the remaining 2 to them. Hard work. Bao Jiaming was helpless. In Ancient City, his strength was enough to rank in the top 5, but he had never made a move. Even if he did, it would be to teach those who were weaker than him a lesson. As for people like Wang Chuan, he had never fought with them. Therefore, many people had mixed opinions about Bao Jiaming. Many times it was not that he did not make a move, but that he rarely did. This was related to the cultivation technique he cultivated. "Why don't you guys go?" Bao Jiaming stared at the 3 people who were pointing at him and whispering. Bao Jiaming's divine perception was sharp, and he heard what they were saying. Bao Jiaming was not a kind person. He would seek revenge for the smallest grievance, and could not tolerate sand in his eyes. When they saw that Bao Jiaming had sensed what they were talking about, they immediately shut their mouth. "If you talk big in the future, I'll throw you out," Bao Jiaming said directly. A long sword appeared in his hand. However, when combined with his bloated body, it looked a little funny. He took a step and disappeared from where he stood. The mountain peak in the distance suddenly exploded. Rocks that were bigger than houses flew everywhere. The 3 people who had spoken previously looked at this scene in horror, their mouths forming an O shape. There were restrictions in the abandoned grounds. Original God Realm experts could not unleash their full power here. However, when Bao Jiaming attacked, not only was his body light, but his strength was also terrifying. He was definitely not weaker than Chern Hufeng. Bao Jiaming was in the middle of the insect swarm. It was as if he had entered a place where no one could stop him. He swung the long sword in his hand. Green light surged, and the insect swarm was annihilated in large patches. Lin Yu also moved. The time and space Tao law on his body surged. The Great Void 8 divisions, which he had not used for a long time, appeared at this moment. Azura's illusory figure stood tall between heaven and earth. His fists were constantly smashing down, and the earth was devastated. At the same time, Lin Yu did not give up on the little bit of good fortune. The devouring starry sky appeared, continuously absorbing the rune energy absorbed by these insects into his body to strengthen himself. There were countless insects here. Although the strength of each one was insignificant, they could make up for it with their numbers. The few of them were constantly getting closer. There were also many dangers. The insects could even gnaw and refine the runes, let alone the physical body of a cultivator. The few of them had to be careful at all times to avoid the invasion of the insects. Now, they did not hold back anymore. Sword light filled the sky, endless primal chaos flames appeared in the abandoned grounds. Soon, Tian-Yi had already reached the location of the coffin. Now, the swamp here had already dried up under the primal chaos flames in his palm. It had become cracked soil. Even the runes left on it had disappeared. He was approaching the coffin. Although the aura of the coffin had already surpassed the original god realm, it had still passed away. Through the investigation of Tian-Yi's Eye of Chaos, there did not seem to be any living beings inside. Perhaps it was just an empty coffin. However, the runes on it had affected an area and nurtured countless insects. Boom! Tian-Yi took the lead and opened the coffin lid. Even though the coffin was in the swamp, there was still a large amount of dust. As it was opened, dust flew everywhere. As the dust dissipated, the thing inside appeared. On it was a bundle of straw tied with a red rope. It looked like a scarecrow. However, there was only an incomplete head here. Not long after, the group arrived in front of the coffin. After opening it, there was a bundle of straw inside. There was no special aura on it. The few of them gathered the 7 coffins together. The reason why the compass was still vibrating crazily was because of this straw. This should be something left behind by an utmost being in the past. Tian-Yi guessed. The compass in his hand could sense the aura of an utmost being. However, after coming here, the compass was vibrating so violently. It must be because of the straw. Chapter 13:21. There should be clues to the existence of the corpse of the utmost being here. Tian-Yi looked at the few coffins. They were prepared to fuse the scarecrows together. Someone revealed a hint of worry and said, "If we fuse the scarecrows together and it revives, will there be any problems?" It wasn't as if they didn't have such concerns. "I have an idea. If it really revives, we can work together to suppress it." Tian-Yi took out a piece of parchment that recorded a broken formation. He handed it over to Lin Yu and the others. 10 directions Yang formation. Bao Jiaming and the others recognized this broken formation. The 10 directions Yang formation was created by an utmost being back then. It was a terrifying sealing technique that was rumored to have been lost long ago. To think that it would appear once more. Everyone looked at Tian-Yi with astonished gazes. Back then, the 10 directions Yang formation had suppressed many strange sovereigns and refined them within it. The few of them each took one side. With a wave of Tian-Yi's hand, formation flags appeared on the ground and surrounded the coffins. At the same time, several beams of scarlet light pierced through the sky and gradually condensed together, sealing this place completely. Lin Yu and the others took charge of opening the eyes. Tian-Yi activated the energy in his body and fused the scarecrows together. As the arms, legs, head, and body fused together in the first coffin, a terrifying energy fluctuation surged forth. At this moment, a black aura appeared above the 10 directions Yang formation, bringing with it a strange aura. This is the karma that was formed after the 10 directions Yang formation killed too many strange sovereigns back then. Don't worry too much about it. Tian-Yi's face was solemn. Even though his status was unimaginable, he was still just an original God realm cultivator. The original God realm and the Tao induction realm were no longer on the same level. The original God realm was entering the Tao. The Tao induction realm was going against the Tao, and contained great terror within. This was also the reason why the Tao induction realm was so strong. Back when Lin Yu killed Wang Chuan, Wang Tianjun had made his move. He had no way of resisting at all. Roar! From within the coffins came the roar of the scarecrow. It was soul-stirring and sent chills down one's spine. The 10 directions Yang formation revealed its might. Endless flames were burning within it. It was as though this place was under the true flames of the sun, and everything was burnt to ashes. However, the scarecrow stood up, completely unaffected. At this moment, He looked at Lin Yu and the others outside the array formation and actually took the initiative to attack. He wanted to destroy the array formation and kill everyone. These people had disturbed his slumber. At this moment, he was incomparably furious. A terrifying killing intent constantly pervaded the air. However, the 10 Directions Yang formation was too powerful. It was worthy of being the formation that had killed a sovereign back then. Even though what they had displayed was incomplete, it was still no problem for them to deal with a creature at the early stage of Tao realm. Everyone unleashed their full strength. Terrifying true fire descended, instantly igniting the scarecrow. Tian-E started to maintain the array formation and added in the primal chaos true fire. The scarecrow was innately restrained and was now howling. Although his intelligence wasn't high, he could clearly feel the pain. Endless flames were rising. Not long after, the scarecrow's voice disappeared. What replaced them were beads that looked like colored glass and palm-sized scarecrows. Now that the scarecrow had completely fallen, the true spirit in its body had been destroyed by the array. Everyone came in front of it and felt the terrifying energy fluctuations from the bead. The energy contained within was extremely pure and would definitely be of great use to cultivators. It was like alchemy. The array had refined all of the scarecrow's divinity and now turned it into a colored glass bead. Everyone came forward. After confirming that there was no danger, they left the array formation. The coffin had already turned into ashes. Now, only the scarecrow and the colored glass bead were left. Someone picked up the scarecrow and looked at it, then casually threw it aside. On the other hand, the colored glass bead still seemed to be nurturing flames. It rose up and pointed in a direction. Lin Yu looked at the scarecrow at his feet and casually picked it up. He used the power of the ancient characters to deduce the origin of the scarecrow. However, at the same time, he also discovered the divine power that the scarecrow possessed. Although it looked very dilapidated right now, the colored glass bead seemed to be pointing in a direction. That should be where the corpse of the utmost being is, Tian-E said. He had already sensed the aura of the utmost being from the scarecrow. It was very weak, but it did not escape his chaos divine eye. The colored glass bead had great uses and could increase one's cultivation. Therefore, Tian-E did not keep it for himself. Instead, he distributed it to everyone. I saw Lin Yu keep the scarecrow. That's the true body. It must be much more valuable than these beads that have gathered energy. Lin Yu shouldn't have gotten the bead, someone said directly. It was the man that Lin Yu used the ancient sword to save. At this moment, he incited the people around him. Because if Lin Yu joined in, each person would not be able to get 2 beads. Without a doubt, it would be a huge loss for them. Are you talking about this? Lin Yu had been holding the scarecrow in his hand and said indifferently. That's right. The man smiled. Before Lin Yu, they had already checked the scarecrow. The divinity within it had already been lost and was not of much use. Right now, he was just using it to target Lin Yu. Who asked you to pick up that thing? The man snickered in his heart. However, for Lin Yu, the value of the scarecrow was way more valuable than these beads. No problem, Lin Yu said calmly. However, this man had targeted him time and time again. There was no need for him to continue living. Even though Wang Chuan looked at Lin Yu with an unfriendly gaze, he did not stand out to target Lin Yu for the sake of the big picture. But this man was an ungrateful wretch. You knew that the scarecrow was useless. So, you did it on purpose, didn't you? Bao Jianming stepped forth and questioned. You, Bao Jianming, are one of the strongest people in the ancient city. I did not dare to offend you. But, aren't you just being a busybody? The man said. He expected that if a conflict were to break out in the ancient ruins, he would definitely be severely punished when he returned. That was the reason why he dared to provoke Lin Yu and the others so brazenly. However, he did not know that in the eyes of Lin Yu, he could go and die. Yu Bao Jianming was furious. However, before entering the ancient ruins, he was warned not to fight among himself. For the sake of the big picture, Bao Jiaming held it in and said, "I don't care who is backing you. If not for the fact that we are in the ancient ruins and need your strength, I would definitely beat you to a pulp." Bao Jiaming said fiercely. It was obvious that he was protecting Lin Yu. "Fellow Taoist Bao, there's no need to stoop to the level of a lackey," Lin Yu said with a smile. He secretly sent a voice transmission. "The value of this scarecrow is way greater than the beads." After hearing this, Bao Jiaming did not continue to pursue the matter. Tian-Yi held a bead and let it float in the air, slowly drifting in a direction. As time passed, Lin Yu was playing with the scarecrow at the back. The man looked at him as though he was looking at a fool, with a mocking smile. By now, Lin Yu already knew that the man had someone backing him up. Otherwise, with his cultivation, he would definitely be courting death if he were to provoke Lin Yu. "Are you trying to make use of others to bait me into making a move?" Lin Yu's lips curled into a mocking smile. Out of nowhere, a strand of black hair appeared in his hand. It came from the man's body. Lin Yu slowly tied the strand of black hair to the waist of the scarecrow. With a swipe, the strand of black hair burst into flames and turned into ashes. Suddenly, the man felt a chill down his spine and touched it immediately. However, he did not find anything out of the ordinary and did not continue to bother about it. Chapter 13:22. Everyone continued forward. However, after 2 hours, black chi gradually appeared on the man's body. Gradually, his face became extremely ferocious, as though he was in great pain. The people around him went forward to inquire. However, at this moment the man actually burst into flames. Strange blue flames appeared on his body. His painful roar resounded throughout the entire area. In the end, even Tian-Yi was unable to save his life. What happened? Everyone was terrified. After entering the lost grounds, they had been in danger. Now that such a strange scene had happened to the man, some people could not help but look around warily, as well as themselves. "It must be you, Lin Yu. You killed him." The person beside him stood up and pointed at Lin Yu. This was because only the man had been targeting Lin Yu. Now, such a strange scene had happened. That person immediately linked his death to Lin Yu. "Do you have any evidence? Is this considered internal strife?" Lin Yu looked at the remaining man and said indifferently, "Evidence, evidence. Evidence is that he provoked you verbally." The man wanted to find evidence from the ashes of the corpse, but he did not get any result. "It's not a delusion, but a fabrication. You are really smart," Bao Jiaming mocked. The person from before had been discussing with the man on how to target Lin Yu. Now that the man was dead, he was naturally terrified. However, there was indeed no evidence. Some people saw this and someone stepped forward to say, "Li Sun, don't talk nonsense without evidence." He was reminding Li Sun. After all, there was no evidence pointing to Lin Yu. "Let's continue forward," Tian-Yi said indifferently. On the path of cultivators, death and injury were common. However, when he turned his head, he secretly glanced at Lin Yu. Perhaps he already knew that this was Lin Yu's doing from the ashes, but he did not say anything. It seems that Tian-Yi's divine instinct is very sharp, Lin Yu thought to himself. At the same time, he was also amazed by the strangeness of the scarecrow he had obtained. It could kill people without them noticing, making it impossible to guard against. Lin Yu stored the scarecrow in his inner world. This was just a small interlude. For these small fries, Lin Yu was just experimenting to see what kind of magical powers the item he had obtained had. At this moment, a misty mountain range appeared in front of them. The blue fog was filled with life. At the same time, it was also filled with strangeness. The colored glass bead was vibrating, as if the end was right in front of them. Tian-Yi stepped forth and released his Chaos Divine Eye. However, it lost its effect in this place. "Brother Lin, Can you tell if there's any danger within? Lin Yu stepped forward and tried to use the power of the ancient character to deduce what was going on. But after an hour, he still didn't find any clues. Lin Yu shook his head. He wasn't sure what was inside, but his innate divine instinct told him that if he went in, he might encounter danger. Lin Yu told Tian-Yi the truth. To this, Tian-Yi also expressed his agreement. But now that they were here, the colored glass bead was vibrating violently, as though it had sensed the aura of an utmost being back then. Therefore, it wanted to return there anxiously. You guys wait here. I want to go in and check it out, Tian-Yi said. Lin Yu spoke up as well. I'll go with you. Tian-Yi did not reject. He knew that Lin Yu was not simple and had the ability to protect himself. Tian-Yi, be careful. Everyone present reminded Tian-Yi. Only Bao Jianming and the other two stepped forth, making Lin Yu pay attention to them at all times. The two of them entered. Looking at their figures gradually disappearing, everyone could not help but feel worried. Within the fog, the two of them walked side by side. They were wary of their surroundings. The two of them did not say much as they continued moving forward. The fog was strange, but at the same time, it was filled with life. Lin Yu tried using his devouring starry skies mystic power to refine this substance. After a few tries, he ensured that there were no accident. The fog here was not dangerous. But just as Lin Yu and Tian-Yi were moving forward, Tian-Yi suddenly disappeared. However, Tian-Yi had mysteriously disappeared. This unforeseen event happened very suddenly. Even though Lin Yu was vigilant at all times, he did not discover anything unusual. The blue fog was not a threat, but this mountain range was strange. Lin Yu frowned. He looked around but did not discover any clues. He constantly sensed for Tian-Yi's aura. But in the end, he discovered that Tian-Yi's aura had completely disappeared. It was as if he was no longer in this area. For 3 consecutive days, Lin Yu once again moved forward for a period of time. He still did not discover Tian-Yi's aura. All of a sudden, a group of strange beasts appeared beside Lin Yu. They seemed to be formed from plants. However, their faces were ferocious and bloodthirsty. They did not have much intelligence. What was even more shocking was that each of the strange beasts here had the combat strength of a late original God Realm cultivator. Lin Yu looked at this scene indifferently. Without any hesitation, he attacked directly. Although the late original God Realm strange beasts were strong, they were still not enough to deal with Lin Yu. With just 3 slashes, the space-time laws flowed. These strange beasts were cut in half at the waist and turned back into plant. After moving forward for a while, Lin Yu could more or less confirm that there was no great danger here. Among them, the highest cultivation base of the strange beasts stopped at the late original God Realm. He left this place with doubts in his heart. Everyone saw Lin Yu leave. They could not help but frown. Someone went up and asked anxiously, "Where's Tian-Yi?" "He disappeared a few days ago," Lin Yu said honestly. After all, Tian-Yi's disappearance was very strange. Even Lin Yu could not understand it. "What did you say?" someone said in disbelief. "Then why did you come back?" someone asked. Tian-Yi was the hope of their ancient city. He was known as the person most likely to break through to the utmost level. Now, he was lost in the forgotten grounds. This was hard to accept. At the same time, they looked at Lin Yu suspiciously. Someone even asked directly, "Did you do something to Tian-Yi? No wonder you said that you entered with Tian-Yi." He was surrounded by doubts and stubbornness. "Quiet." The eldest disciple of the sword sect stepped forward. A sword chi clanged and blocked everyone's mouth. Lin Yu did not care about everyone's suspicions. "Daoist Lin, please explain the situation inside," the eldest disciple of the sword sect asked. "There's no danger inside. However, I don't know what happened to Tian-Yi's disappearance," Lin Yu said. "As for whether you believe me or not, please do as you wish." Suppress him first, then talk about other things, Li Sun, who spoke for the man just now, said. He had stirred up everyone's emotions. After all, Tian Yi's identity was too special. I believe in Daoist Lin's character, the woman with the veil on her face said at this time. Fairy you don't have to make excuses for him. This person should not have appeared in the ancient city. Li Sun said again, the lowly people in the cage are dirty and filthy even at the bottom of their hearts. Chapter 13:23. Yes, he should have left the ancient city long ago. Now that Tian Yi has disappeared without a trace, even 10,000 deaths can't absolve him from the blame. Someone was furious and almost attacked. Get out! Get out! Everyone said. Fellow Daoist Lin, you don't have to care. Bao Jianming went forward and comforted him. The bloodline of the first divine king of the 12 universes? I think he's just a dove that stole the sparrow's nest and deceived the world. Li Sun continued. However, he didn't finish his sentence. The space-time laws surged and directly twisted his neck, causing his head to explode. Lin Yu didn't say a word. He turned and left. He knew that there was someone behind everything. Lin Yu didn't pursue the matter. There was nothing in the ancient city that was worth his concern. He didn't turn back. He was very disappointed with the people in the ancient city. The ancient city wasn't the only place one could live in. His goal in coming here was to become stronger. Everyone was shocked when they saw Lin Yu's methods. For a time, the Sword Sect's eldest senior brother didn't say anything. No one dared to stop him. They could only watch as Lin Yu's figure gradually disappeared. Bao Jianming's eyes were sad. He didn't go forward to continue persuading Lin Yu. If it were him, he would probably do the same. After Lin Yu left the ancient city, he headed east. There was an abundance of energy here. Now that Lin Yu was in the original God realm, he had already perfected the Tao laws. He only needed energy and material to break through. Therefore, Lin Yu didn't plan to leave in a hurry. After I break through, I'll pick you up. Lin Yu's only concern in the ancient city was Lin Yu. If Lin Yu didn't care about Lin Yu's body and wanted him to live for a while longer, he would have killed him. In the face of those who provoked him, Lin Yu had already killed them. A lake appeared in the east. Lin Yu sat there cross-legged. Until 2 hours later, everything in the surroundings was quietly changing. When he opened his eyes again, it had already turned into a boundless desert with no end in sight. An illusion? Lin Yu looked at the scene. He traveled alone and didn't know how far he had traveled. Lin Yu looked at all of this indifferently. Doubts arose in his heart. He used the ancient characters to deduce and found that this place was a chaotic and unknown place. It was as if this place was the birthplace of heaven and earth. He stood up. Did that lake dry up? Lin Yu muttered as he looked at the sunken desert in front of him. Lin Yu did not carefully observe the lake previously as it was shrouded in mist. Now that it had dried up, he did not expect it to be so huge and boundless. Lin Yu entered and wanted to find out what was going on. After a few days, Lin Yu seemed to have arrived at the center. The gravel here gradually turned black, forming a hard ground, as if it had been scorched by some extreme heat, causing it to melt and condense into this state. Dozens of miles later, he seemed to have reached the end of this place. At this moment, Lin Yu felt the aura of the mysterious race. However, there was only one. Lin Yu concealed his aura and looked at the person before him. It was the traitor that Gu Qing had mentioned, Chen Chen. Before him was a gigantic black stone wall. It was 10 feet tall and stretched for a mile. He touched the wall with his palm as though he was searching for something, hoping to discover something hidden within the stone wall. A few hours passed. Chen Chen closed his eyes and saw the power of the stars descending from the skies. Since I'm here, there's no need to hide anymore, Chen Chen said slowly. His face was pale and sickly. However, his posture was handsome. Lin Yu knew that Chen Chen had discovered him and walked out. The two of them faced each other. Just as Lin Yu arrived at the stone wall, his sharp consciousness suddenly realized that the stone wall had moved. Indeed, there's something left behind by the utmost being here? Chen Chen's eyes let out a look of surprise. The reason why I couldn't sense it earlier on was because there was a strange aura on me. Chen Chen understood it quickly. Just as he locked onto a position, the sky was filled with strange starlight that was trying to break through the stone wall. Suddenly, something burst out from the stone wall and hid behind Lin Yu. He could not sense any strange aura from Lin Yu. Therefore, he was naturally closer to Lin Yu. The thing that burst out was a ball of scarlet flames with runes intertwining on it. If one were to take a closer look, they would be able to see the wisdom of the great Tao within the flames. It was constructed from the laws of the great Tao. It's the origin flame indeed. Chen Chen's eyes shone with a glint. The reason why he was here was for this ball of flames. However, the origin flame was closer to Lin Yu now. Seeing that Chen Chen was laughing out loud, it could not help but hide even deeper. It already possessed a simple level of intelligence. Now that it was behind Lin Yu, it did not emit a terrifying temperature. Save me! The origin flame let out a weak consciousness. Lin Yu looked at Chen Chen calmly and said, "You can't keep me here." He was speaking the truth. Lin Yu had mastered the laws of time and space. If he wanted to leave, no one of the same cultivation realm could stop him. He did not know where the other members of the mysterious race were. "You must be the one who injured Quasi-King Yu not long ago." He looked at Lin Yu and guessed his identity. Lin Yu did not reply, which was a silent acknowledgement. If you didn't master the laws of time and space, you wouldn't be able to escape today, Chen Chen said coldly. He did not fly into a rage because Lin Yu had obtained the origin flame. Instead, he maintained his composure. "If there were no other members of the mysterious race around you, I would have killed you," Lin Yu said calmly. "I look forward to our next encounter. Let's fight to our heart's content," Chen Chen said slowly. He did not force Lin Yu to stay. Instead, he allowed Lin Yu to leave. Using the world's end near at hand, Lin Yu disappeared on the spot with the origin flame. In the blink of an eye, he did not know where he was. Lin Yu seemed to have arrived in another space. "Are you the one who affected me?" Lin Yu looked at the thing in his hand that Chen Chen called the origin flame. What surprised Lin Yu was that the origin flame could interfere with the use of his remarkable powers. Basically, it could affect the operation of time and space. Lin Yu could not help but be curious. He looked carefully at the origin flame. There seemed to be a few more substances in it. If he looked carefully, there were a total of 3 threads of different colors in it. Lin Yu was very familiar with 2 of them. They were filled with the power of time and space. The other one was Chen Chen's Star Dao Law. It can inscribe other people's Dao Law? Lin Yu looked at the flame in his hand. It was only the size of a thumb and could not help but be surprised. This was the first time he had seen a divine object in this world that could inscribe other people's Dao Law. Just now, Lin Yu had only displayed the space-time Dao Law once, and it was engraved in the blink of an eye. In the process of leaving, Lin Yu could use the engraved Dao Law to interfere with the performance of his divine powers. Chapter 1324. The primordial flame danced on Lin Yu's fingertip. However, there was something mysterious about it. Lin Yu did not know if the primordial flame was beneficial to him. He looked into his body and realized that his Dao laws were not damaged by the carving of the primordial flame. Only then did Lin Yu feel relieved. "What's your purpose in bringing me here?" Lin Yu looked at the primordial flame on his fingertips and asked slowly. This was a dark space. It was dead silent. However, one could see that there were walls everywhere. They were airtight and there were only specks of stars on them. It seemed like they were carved by someone. Lin Yu understood from the people in the ancient city that the Tao laws of the stars were controlled by the utmost being who had betrayed the universe back then. He was also the ancestor of Chunchen. However, his Tao laws had appeared here. Lin Yu could not help but be wary. However, the Tao laws of the stars did not seem to be the only ones here. There were other things as well. The Tao laws of the 5 elements were also faintly visible on the walls. Traces left behind by the utmost being back then? Lin Yu seemed to have guessed it. On the stone walls, there were traces left behind by swords and sabers. Even though a long time had passed, the Tao laws on them were still present. Finger holes, fist imprints. Under the illumination of the primordial flame, they appeared before Lin Yu. Lin Yu looked around and was slightly surprised. This place was left behind by the utmost being back then. It seemed like it was done intentionally. As for the purpose, Lin Yu could not guess it. After the primordial flame arrived here, it was obvious that it was overjoyed. It cheered on Lin Yu's hand and jumped up and down. After that, it left Lin Yu's finger and floated in front of the stone walls. It was carving those Tao laws. Lin Yu looked at the primordial flame that was gradually growing stronger. Time passed by. He did not know how long had passed. Lin Yu did not know what level the primordial flame would reach after carving those Tao laws. The primordial flame was gradually growing stronger as a scorching aura spread out continuously. It almost melted the stone walls here. At this time, the primordial flame sent out a painful thought. It was as if he could not withstand so many supreme Tao laws entering his body. Now, there was a danger of his body exploding. When Lin Yu saw this scene, he could not help but laugh in his heart. Although the origin of this primordial flame was very mysterious, it seemed to have just gained sentience like an ignorant child. Now, it was constantly hitting the stone wall. He wanted to relieve the pain. Give up some Tao laws, Lin Yu reminded. Woo! The primordial fire essence let out a hiss and stopped ramming into the stone wall. It floated in the air, resisting the terrifying Taoist laws. At the same time, it was thinking about what to give up. However, after a long time, the primordial flame still did not expel the Tao law. He seemed to be very reluctant. It was difficult for him to give up anything. Hurry up and make your choice. Otherwise, I'm afraid you won't have the chance to inscribe Tao laws in the future, Lin Yu said slowly. This triggered the primordial fire origin's pain. He directly obliterated a large number of Tao laws that had been engraved. After a long while, Yuanhua's aura was no longer as berserk. It gradually calmed down. After a long time, the primordial fire origin appeared in front of Lin Yu. However, it was now more than twice as big as before. The intertwined runes on it had also become more profound. Now, Lin Yu could no longer see the Tao laws in its body clearly. There was already an aura of chaos in it. The primordial fire origin jumped onto Lin Yu's head with a tame feeling. It was establishing some kind of connection with Lin Yu, similar to recognizing him as its master. Everything happened very suddenly. Under the influence of the primordial fire origin's aura, Lin Yu seemed to have come to an unknown place. When heaven and earth were first born, the universe and all things had yet to be born. Lin Yu stood in the midst of chaos, and there was only a cluster of fire in front of him. It smelted the thousands of Taos in the world. This was the initial form of the primordial fire origin. However, when heaven and earth were first born, there seemed to be more than one cluster of primordial fire origin. Instead, there were 9. However, when heaven and earth were first born, they exploded and turned into the great Tao of the origin and entered the world. Only a weak cluster had not fully grown. In the end, it was lost somewhere in the world and fell silent. Lin Yu understood that this cluster of fire was the only primordial fire origin that existed. It could carry the 3,000 great Tao of heaven and earth and had endless mysteries. Now, it chose to establish a connection with Lin Yu. Before the connection was complete, Lin Yu could already feel the mysteries within. his inner world seemed to have undergone some changes. The Tao laws that came from the other original gods were gradually perfecting and reaching perfection. Moreover, Lin Yu could now see the supreme Tao laws that were imprinted in the primordial fire origin. He could also use them to comprehend and refine them himself. A year had passed. Lin Yu's connection with the primordial fire origin had only just been established. Now, Lin Yu and the primordial fire origin were inseparable. The primordial fire origin appeared in Lin Yu's inner world and roamed within. When it reached the inner world where Lin Yu's Tao fruit of present life existed, it was not affected in the slightest. However, when it entered the Tao fruit of past life, it was immediately repelled. It let out a muffled groan and grumbled in dissatisfaction. Lin Yu came before the stone wall and studied it carefully. Even though the most important thing on it was the Tao laws, from the traces on it, one could feel the way the utmost beings of that time attacked and their state of mind at that time. Lin Yu's state of mind was completely silent within. At this moment, he seemed to have become the utmost being of that time. Standing before the stone wall, he would either swing his sword or point his finger. His current state of mind was no longer the same as before. Originally, after 100,000 years of reincarnation, his state of mind was like a boulder that could not be touched by anything. Now, he had an indifferent and otherworldly aura. He stood at the pinnacle of heaven and earth. He looked down on the ancient times. There was a sense of loneliness. In the meantime, the primordial fire origin had been trying to enter the other two layers of Lin Yu's inner world. However, it did not succeed. Right now, it was already fighting against Lin Yu's two layers of inner worlds. It was constantly trying to squeeze in. Finally, Lin Yu woke up. The deep look in his eyes disappeared in a flash. The primordial fire origin had also sensed Lin Yu's awakening. At this moment, it was in the outside world. After a year of settling, the primordial fire origin seemed to have reached a bottleneck at this stage. It was difficult for it to refine other Tao laws. Right now, there were a total of 8 Tao laws in his body, including Lin Yu's time and space Tao laws and Chen Chen's star Tao law. These few Tao laws were the top great Tao laws in the world. The primordial fire origin grumbled in dissatisfaction. Staying here for a long time was not a solution. Finally, Lin Yu brought the primordial fire origin and left this place, reappearing in the lost ground. Lin Yu stood in the desert. Chen Chen had already left long ago. Now, Lin Yu had some doubts about whether there was a secret behind the betrayal of Chen Chen's ancestor. He could see some clues from Chen Chen's behavior. He seemed to have deliberately let Lin Yu leave and come here to get the primordial fire origin because he was waiting for Lin Yu's arrival. Chapter 1325. Lin Yu did not know whether there was something fishy about the Chunchen clan's betrayal or not. He did not think about it anymore. If the betrayal was fake, it would appear in the future. Lin Yu walked out of the desert. As he stepped out, Lin Yu disappeared into the spatial tunnel. Now, his comprehension of the space-time laws was getting better and better. Not long after, Lin Yu appeared in a spacious area. There were many rocks lying around like small hills. There were many vines on them. At this moment, the fluctuations of a battle came from the front. It was Tian Yi's aura. He was now in a confrontation with the strange clan. Lin Yu came to the periphery of the battlefield. At this moment, both sides sensed Lin Yu's aura. Clearly, the people of Ancient City were at a disadvantage. Many people had already died. At this moment, Tian Yi was guarding the front. His aura was also chaotic. Clearly, they had just gone through a battle of life and death. Now, Tian Yi was maintaining the 10-directional yang formation. However, there was a strange aura on it that was constantly corroding the formation. It was about to be broken. Lin Yu. After seeing Lin Yu's figure, Bao Jiaming and the others were delighted. At the same time, Tian Yi's eyes shone brightly. Lin Yu gave people the feeling that he was becoming more and more powerful. However, It was hard to describe this feeling because Lin Yu's qi hadn't changed. It was just that his qi was becoming more and more powerful. People couldn't help but look at him. When the leader of the strange clan saw Lin Yu, his eyes also shone brightly. Foolish people of ancient city. They actually chased away such an outstanding person. The leader looked disdainfully at the people of ancient city who were now holed up in the formation. Brother Lin, you're here? Tian Yi's face was bitter. After he came out, he learned that Lin Yu had been chased away. Therefore, he punished many people. However, in the current situation, even Tian Yi could not say anything and ask Lin Yu to save them. He looked at the woman whose face was covered by a veil. His eyes were calm, but there was a trace of blame in them. Lin Yu didn't seem to sense the gazes of the others. He calmly glanced at the leader of the strange race and spoke, "You cannot kill those three." He pointed at Bao Jianming and the others. As for the others, Lin Yu did not mention them. The scene fell into silence. The survivors of the ancient city did not say anything. After all, they had wrongly accused Lin Yu. Moreover, they had spoken so viciously to him previously. If it were any of them, they probably wouldn't care about them anymore. No problem. You and I will fight after we have dealt with the Bai in an ancient city, Ming Qintian said slowly. All right, life or death. Lin Yu nodded calmly. At this moment, his state of mind was calm and composed. Bao Jianming and the other two came out. Lin Yu sat cross-legged on the ground and closed his eyes to rest. He no longer cared about the battle between the two parties. Bao Jianming and the other two wanted to say something but stopped. They frowned. The ancient city's bloodline has already declined. How dare we start a war with the underworld? The strange royal who had taken over in Tianshu's body slowly spoke. There was a hint of provocation in his words. The eldest senior brother of the sword sect stood with his sword. The array was about to break. Tian Yi sighed. Endless chaotic light appeared on his body. You are indeed the son of the primal chaos supreme. Chen Chen's eyes were bright. Starlight erupted from his body, and he directly faced Tian Yi. He had been longing for this battle. The primal chaos supreme had a long history. It was said that he had existed since the beginning of the world. He was an extremely ancient and powerful existence. In the battle back then, he had blocked 7 sovereigns. Although he ended up dying, he managed to exchange for 2 sovereigns. It was no wonder that the older generation of the ancient city addressed Tian Yi as the little ancestor. He had the inheritance of the primal chaos supreme. His talent was terrifying. High hopes were placed on him. He was revived in the current era so that he could suppress the strange races in the future and resist the calamity of the world. You shouldn't have done this. Tian Yi looked at the woman with a veil and said calmly. There was no reproach in his tone. The woman named you also sighed. The primal chaos supreme once said that the future ruler of the heavenly Tao would be born in this era. That person can only be you, Tian Yi. The woman did not regret her decision. She had always thought that it would be like this. However, after Lin Yu appeared, she felt pressured. Because Lin Yu had too many things on him. Moreover, the talent that he had displayed was also extremely shocking. If this continued, Tian Yi's status might be affected. This was also the reason why she framed Lin Yu and forced him to leave. Tian Yi's disappearance was also related to the woman's plan. She had long known that there was another world in this mystic land. Tian Yi had also obtained opportunities from it. If I don't even have this bit of confidence and am still afraid of being threatened by my own people, I'm afraid that even if you clear all the obstacles, it will still be difficult for me to reach the peak of the Great Tao. After saying that, Tian Yi looked at Chen Chen, who was already attacking him. The chaos in his eyes flashed and disappeared. The aura on his body gradually became hazy and undetectable. The surrounding aura was also affected. The area within a radius of several hundred feet seemed to be experiencing the creation of heaven and earth. Endless chaos surrounded it. You looked at Tian. A trace of regret appeared in her eyes. However, now that the battle was imminent, it would not end until one of them died. The people in the ancient city shouted at this moment, erupting with all their strength. The cultivation method of the strange race was completely different from that of the ancient city or the universe. The people who came here were all direct descendants of the strange race's royal family. Regardless of talent or bloodline, they were all extremely powerful. Every move they made was like a god in the darkness, emitting an aura that made one's heart palpitate. At this moment, Tian was facing the strange race's royal family member, who had taken over in Tianchu's body and Chen at the same time. "Let me do it alone," Chen berated the other royal family member. At the same time, the power of the stars swept down, cracking a large number of rocks. The rocks deeper in the ground were exposed. It seemed to be a huge palace. There were patterns engraved on it. At the same time, a supreme aura was revealed under the palace. This was the true resting place of the utmost being in the past. His corpse was in it. At this moment, the strange race had already used their supreme means. Above the sky, there was a rotten wooden box that emitted a dark light, completely sealing this place. Nothing could escape. It was constantly wearing down the supreme aura above the palace. The strange race was very sensitive to the supreme aura. If they did not use the supreme weapon of their race, it would be difficult for them to move around here. Their cultivation would be suppressed. In serious cases, they might even die. After all, this was the corpse of the true utmost being. It had once fought with the strange race's throne. Just a glance from him was enough to destroy countless living beings. Chapter 13:26. However, it was clear that the strange race had come prepared this time around. They used the origin artifact of the sovereign stage. It was a huge black seal that was suppressing the ground. A strange aura spread out, constantly wearing down the power of the sovereign stage. The sovereign stage had passed away for countless years. Otherwise, even the origin artifact of the sovereign stage would not be able to affect it. Everyone was fighting with all their might. Even Yu, who had plotted against Lin Yu, used all of his power. Endless multicolored light surged, causing everyone's expression to change. Bao Jianming's eyes were also bloodshot. Not long after, many cultivators of the ancient city were bleeding and dying forever. Their bodies were devoured by the strange aura. "Thank you for your kindness, Taoist Lin. But I'm still a member of the ancient city." Bao Jianming cupped his fist. A long sword appeared in his hand, and he appeared on the battlefield. Including Fu Lingyun and Lin Yu, they all felt apologetic towards Lin Yu. They each took out their artifacts and charged into the battlefield. Lin Yu sighed faintly. He respected their choice. Bao Jianming was facing the man in green who was slaughtering the cultivators of the ancient city. He had taken over in Tianchu's body and was incomparably powerful. Now, he was at the peak of the original God realm. But Bao Jianming's strength was not to be underestimated. The long sword emitted a blazing light. Although it did not appear to be very sharp, and even appeared to be very weak, the killing intent contained within it was incomparable. Bao Jianming had already activated the Great Dream Heaven Art. He was now in a state of sleep. Every time he attacked, he could do as he pleased. But vaguely, he was suppressing the man in green. The battle continued. However, the disparity between the strength of the ancient city and that of the strange tribe was too great. The strange creatures had been developing for countless years. No one knew how many sovereigns they had. They had not sent out all their sky prides, but the people of the ancient city were already struggling. Only Tian was able to suppress Chen, as expected of the sovereign stage's descendant. But what was worrying was that Ming Qin Tian was sitting cross-legged at the side and did not attack. He seemed to be waiting for an opportunity. He was looking at Lin Yu. However, when he saw that Tian had already suppressed Chen, he was shocked. He could no longer sit still. A black gold drum appeared in his hand, and the surrounding space was torn apart. A terrifying aura filled the entire battlefield. At this time, Bao Jianming and the others were all frowning. Right now, everyone was unable to split themselves up and could not lend a helping hand to Tianyi. Who could resist Ming Qingtian? Even Gu Qing, who they thought was the strongest in this generation, had a grave expression on his face as he faced Ming Qingtian. Ming Qingtian walked on the battlefield. Before some people could even get close to him, they coughed up blood and lost their ability to fight. "Are we all going to die here?" someone asked in despair. They looked at the supreme burial mound that had already appeared, and their faces were filled with despair. When they came in, they were all excited. However, in the face of Ming Qingtian's strength, that aura of despair, everyone had lost their confidence. "Strange creatures, hand your lives over to yours truly," Bao Jianming bellowed. He used his most powerful technique. The long sword in his hand weighed more than 10,000 pounds. He pushed the man in green away and charged toward Ming Qingtian. He wanted to share Tianyi's burden. He wanted Tianyi to suppress Qin as soon as possible and unleash his strongest combat strength. Only then would the people in Ancient City have a glimmer of hope. However, Ming Qingtian's strength was too terrifying. He casually waved the black gold drum in his hand and sent Bao Jianming flying. Blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. The surrounding space was constantly being torn apart as Bao Jianming retreated. This was just a casual blow. Although Bao Jianming did not display his combat strength, his true strength could definitely be ranked in the top 5 in Ancient City. However, even so, it was still not enough in front of Ming Qingtian. "I promised that person that I would not kill you. Know your place and get lost." Ming Qingtian only said one sentence, but it was filled with endless majesty. Bao Jianming forcefully stabilized his body and grinned, ignoring the blood in his mouth. He did not say a word. His eyes were filled with determination. Holding the long sword in his hand, he took a step forward and continued to charge toward Ming Qingtian. "Light of a grain of rice," Ming Qingtian said coldly. Terrifying Dao runes condensed on the black gold drum. He was ready to kill Bao Jianming with this blow. "Bao Jianming, retreat quickly." Tianyi had also sensed the terrifying energy waves coming from this side and shouted out loudly, "Bao Jianming!" The expressions of Fu Lingyun and the others changed tremendously. Ming Qingtian's strength had almost surpassed the original God realm. The supreme strength swept up the laws here and crushed toward Bao Jianming. The long sword in Bao Jianming's hand was also gathering power. His identity in Ancient City was also not ordinary. He was the disciple of an expert who had been sleeping for countless years and was about to break through to the highest realm. However, Ming Qingtian was too strong. He had the power to make all the cultivators in the original God realm despair. He was almost in the forbidden zone. No one could stop him. The invincible aura shrouded everyone's heart. They could not even raise their hands to resist. Qi, the blazing black power of the laws, completely shrouded the place. Bao Jianming's figure gradually turned illusory. He was completely swallowed by this terrifying technique. Like a black hole, Ming Qingtian's technique could devour everything. Even though Bao Jianming had used all the techniques of the Great Dream Sky technique, he could only resist for a moment. Everything was swallowed up. Fu Lingyun and the others were stunned. They muttered in a low voice, their faces full of disbelief. Wang Chuan was also covered in blood this time. His face was solemn. However, he was one of the few who remained clear-headed. He shouted, "Bao Jianming has bought us time. What are we waiting for? Kill a few strange creatures and avenge him." His words awakened everyone present and averted a disaster. Everyone woke up from their sorrow. However, at this moment, the black aura here was like a tide that kept fading. There was an irreversible force inside. The laws of time and space permeated it. "You've finally made your move?" Ming Qingtian watched as the black gas dissipated quickly, revealing a tall and straight figure inside. It was Lin Yu. He hugged Bao Jianming with a calm look in his eyes. Looking at Bao Jianming, who was on the verge of death, Lin Yu used the power of the deity King Order to save him. "He is my friend," Lin Yu said indifferently. Ming Qingtian laughed. The auras of the two collided, causing the void to shatter and energy to surge. Not only did it cause the people who were fighting to retreat more than 100 feet, but it also caused them to fall back. Lin Yu, looking at Lin Yu, who had made a move, the people of Ancient City spoke with a guilty look in their eyes. Yu was also at the side and said, "Lin Yu, I am sorry. I was wrong previously. Don't misunderstand. I didn't make a move for you guys. I just didn't want to lose my friend and humiliate the corpse of the utmost being," Lin Yu said indifferently. The life and death of these people in Ancient City had nothing to do with him. The reason why he made a move now was also because of what he had said. Yu did not say much, but he had an embarrassed expression on his face. The person that she had been plotting against was helping them now. Now that Lin Yu had made a move, it was the best thing that could happen to Ancient City. With him resisting Ming Qingtian, Ancient City would have an easier time. Chapter 13:27. The two of them faced each other. After Bao Jianming was rescued, there was still a lingering fear on his face. He already knew that he was no longer a match for Ming Qingtian. Therefore, he retreated from the battlefield and turned to fight the others. Now, only Lin Yu and a few others were left in the middle of the battlefield. Especially Lin Yu. As his and Ming Qingtian's powers intertwined, the void was cracking continuously. And this was before the two of them even started fighting. Yet, such a terrifying scene had already been created. As the two of them raised their hands, they unleashed terrifying killing moves. Endless power was unleashed, as though the Milky Way was hanging down from the 9 heavens, making this place seem extremely sacred and transcendent. Now, Lin Yu did not continue to hide his strength. The 12th level of the inner world was fully revealed. The terrifying oppressive feeling caused everyone's hearts to palpitate. The 12th level of the inner world, Wang Chuan, who was at the side, almost forgot to breathe. It turned out that he had not used his full strength in the battle with Lin Yu. Wang Chuan thought that if Lin Yu had used the 12th level of the inner world that day, he would not have had the slightest chance of winning. Before this, he was still thinking that the 10th level of the inner world was not an invincible existence. However, after seeing Lin Yu, he did not know how much strength Lin Yu was hiding. All eyes on the battlefield shifted to Lin Yu. The aura that he was emitting was simply too terrifying. The 9th level of the inner world was already in the category of forbidden. However, Lin Yu had not only condensed the 10th level, but the 12th level. Tian Yi's face froze. He was the son of the primal chaos utmost being, and had been sealed until now. However, in the long history of ancient times, he had never heard of anyone who had condensed the 12th level of the inner world. He recalled the words that his father had said in the past. It involved a very deep secret. Among them, it mentioned the 12th level of the inner world. This was because the primal chaos utmost being guessed that above the 9th level of the inner world, there was no sign of a world. Instead, it was the number of universes, and now Lin Yu had obviously reached that step. There was hope for him to confirm the thoughts of Tian Yi's father. Tian Yi was now suppressing Chen. However, it was very weak. As a direct descendant of the strange royal family, Chen had already become an unfathomable existence after such a long period of development. Moreover, his ancestor was still dormant in the strange ancestral land. He hadn't died yet. The support from his bloodline allowed Chen to enter the forbidden area of the original god realm. When he saw Lin Yu display his full strength, he was shocked. He no longer held back and began to fight wholeheartedly. He used all of his techniques in an attempt to completely kill Tian Yi, who was shrouded in primal chaos. At this moment, Ming Chi Tian rushed into Lin Yu's inner world with the black gold drum in his hand. The cultivation method of the strange race was different. They did not condense their inner world. Instead, they focused on cultivating their own bodies, developing all the divine power in their bodies. It was as if they could break through everything with brute force. A black halo appeared on Ming Qingtian's body. It was impenetrable and repelled Lin Yu's Tao laws. Lin Yu no longer held back. He knew that this battle was unavoidable before he entered the lost grounds. He held the ancient sword in his hand, and the time and space Tao laws revolved around his body. With a single step, he entered his inner world. The inner world of the original God realm was no smaller than a world. The Tao laws within were completely under Lin Yu's control. They were as easy as waving his arms. Lin Yu stood in his inner world. His entire body was glowing like a god. He was incomparably powerful. However, Ming Qingtian was obviously not a kind person. At this moment, he appeared in Lin Yu's inner world. Although he was suppressed, his expression was still calm and composed. The black divine halo that appeared around him could resist the Tao laws of his inner world. This is a cultivation method that was deliberately cultivated by your people in the Ming realm. Ming Qingtian did not hide anything and said directly. Back then, the forces of the universe had been defeated and all the supreme beings had died. Therefore, most of the people in the universe had been captured and brought into the Ming realm as livestock. Among them, there were some talented people who had been passed down incomplete cultivation methods from the universe to be sparring partners for Ming Qingtian and the others. This was a kind of supernatural power that Ming Qingtian had specially comprehended in order to deal with existences like Lin Yu, who had condensed their inner worlds and transcended the taboo in the Great War of the future. Now it seemed to be very useful. Lin Yu was restrained. The suppression of the Tao laws did not have much effect on Ming Qingtian. However, Lin Yu was not anxious in the face of this. The upper three layers of the inner world pressed down on him. The terrifying power of the Tao laws contained supreme will that covered the heavens and the earth. At this moment, it seemed to affect the past, present, and future. The black divine halo on Ming Qingtian's body began to dim gradually. Lin Yu's upper three layers of the inner world were too terrifying. No super power could suppress him. Ming Qingtian seemed to have predicted this result. He was just experimenting with the superpower that he had created to see if it was useful. However, it did not have much effect on someone like Lin Yu, who was already a taboo. This was only the first confrontation between the two, but it had already affected everyone present. Many people could clearly feel this fluctuation in the midst of the battle. In fact, some of the people from the strange tribe and the ancient city who had lower cultivation bases could no longer withstand this aura and were forced to retreat. Lin Yu's stone sword appeared in his hand. He was in his own inner world and was now under the suppression of the upper three layers of the inner world. Ming Qingtian could no longer use the black divine halo to suppress himself. He was the absolute master of his own inner world. He took a step forward and appeared in front of Ming Qingtian in the blink of an eye. Clang! The sword and the drill collided. There seemed to be a chaotic thunder in the sky. The ground of the inner world instantly exploded. The inner world rolled back and returned to Lin Yu's body. Then, it slowly merged together. Many Tao laws were added to Lin Yu's body. Lin Yu knew that although his upper three layers of the inner world could suppress Ming Qingtian, it was not very effective. It was difficult to have any substantial effect. Therefore, like Ming Qingtian, he channeled all his power into his body. They had to use their strongest techniques and unleash their strongest attacks. Lin Yu had a conversation with Lin Xiu before and had a certain understanding of the cultivation methods of the strange tribe. Hence, he added all the power of his inner world to his body and did not let it manifest. This was to control his own body to the smallest detail. In particular, Lin Yu had mastered the 12th layer of the inner world. The power it contained was unimaginable. One could imagine how difficult it was. After studying the cultivation methods of the strange tribe, Lin Yu had taken the first step on the path of cultivation. He could gather the power of his inner world in his body and let himself erupt with absolute power. Boom! The two of them collided with each other. Their eyes were filled with invincibility. The collision created a terrifying shockwave that blew their black hair and clothes. The two of them retreated at the same time, cracking the void before they could stabilize their bodies. "You didn't disappoint me," Ming Qingtian said slowly. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and revealed his white teeth. He was a battle maniac and was born to fight. Now that he had met a worthy opponent, he was very happy. Lin Yu looked calm. Ming Qingtian was indeed the strongest person he had met in the original God realm. Of course, Tian Yi was one of them. It was just that they had never fought. "You are also very strong." Lin Yu had such an evaluation of his peers. It was enough to show Ming Qingtian's terrifying strength. However, Lin Yu's invincible belief had always been in his heart. Chapter 13:28. The two of them did not say anything else. Their figures disappeared on the spot at the same time. They could only sense the fluctuations coming from various parts of the void. The void exploded inch by inch. The two of them fought with unparalleled bravery. At the same time, their speed was already difficult to perceive with the naked eye. The battle on Tian Yi's side was about to come to an end. However, Chen Chen still did not let anyone go forward to help. Tian Yi was too strong. He had always been calm. As the son of a supreme expert in the past, his talent was unparalleled. Otherwise, he would not have been sealed by his father in advance before ancient history to leave behind hope for future generations. He hoped that Tian Yi would inherit the great Tao in the future and fight against the anomalies. Chen Chen's body was already stained with blood. However, he was smiling very brightly. He did not care about the injuries on his body at all. At this moment, Tian Yi had already seen his goal. He was actually using Tian Yi's Chaos Tao Law to perfect his own technique. The cultivation technique of the anomalies was very different from that of the universe. In Chen Chen's generation, although his talent was terrifying in the anomalies, he had to cultivate the technique passed down by his ancestors to the flawless realm. He had to come to this region of the universe, and Tian Yi controlled the Chaos Tao Law. It was close to the Tao and could contain all Taos. Chen Chen's star great Tao really needed to be tempered by Tian Yi. This was the reason why Chen Chen found Tian Yi. Tian Yi discovered Chen Chen's goal, but he was still indifferent. He did not withdraw his technique. Instead, he became even more terrifying. In almost the blink of an eye, this place was in chaos. Endless chaos flames rose. They enveloped Chen Chen in the flames. With a smile on his face, Chen Chen transformed into a copper cauldron. He sat cross-legged within the cauldron, looking completely calm. He was completing his transformation. Tian Yi naturally could not create a great enemy in the future. As he put his palms together, the chaos flames exploded with a bang. The two of them were sent flying by the impact. Chen Chen was crazy. Even at this moment, he still did not withdraw his technique and continued to complete his transformation. Because of that, his body seemed to have exploded like broken porcelain. He looked extremely ferocious. Even so, he did not seem to feel anything. He slowly stood up, and the starlight on his body shone brightly. He was connected to heaven and earth. Above the firmament, countless stars sprinkled down. Because Tian Yi had forcefully extracted the primal chaos divine flame from his body, he had also suffered quite a bit of damage. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. However, it was clear that Chen Chen's injuries were more serious. At this moment, He was only supporting his broken body and forcefully perfecting his own Tao laws, drawing in the endless power of the stars to cleanse his body. Tian-Yi did not give him a chance. He raised his hand and unleashed a palm strike. Chaos once again descended. Everything here seemed to be heading towards destruction. Everything returned to nirvana. This was the true power of the Chaos Tao Law. The battle there was growing more and more terrifying. The void had been shattered many times, forming a huge crack that extended to the horizon. Ha ha, a flawless star law! Chen Chen laughed wantonly. 7 spots of starlight gradually appeared on his body. They were incomparably dazzling. At this moment, his body seemed to have transformed into the universe, appearing incomparably majestic. The ancient power of the stars neutralized the Chaos Tao Law. The place where he stood turned into a pure land that constantly repelled the Chaos Tao Law. Lin Yu was also using his full strength now. The space and time Tao laws transformed into 2 huge millstones that stood between heaven and earth. However, it was under the influence of these few supreme Tao laws that a huge change happened here. Rumble. The supreme tomb beneath the ground was shaking at this moment, affecting the entire ancient ruins. The ground cracked inch by inch, and countless ancient trees grew out from within. There was another supreme Tao law that began to suppress the chaos, star, and spacetime Tao laws. The supreme power had appeared at this moment. In the sky, the origin item of the throne that was constantly wearing down the power of the tomb was actually retreating, unable to withstand this awakened Tao law. This is the tomb of the green wood utmost being. Some people in the ancient city recognized this supreme Tao law. This was one of the utmost beings of the mystic race, who had mastered the Tao laws of wood of the 5 elements before the ancient history books. He controlled the endless vitality of heaven and earth. It was not because the wood Tao law was stronger than the star or chaos Tao laws. It was because the green wood utmost being of the past was too powerful. As a result, even after countless years, the current Tao law could still suppress the other Taos. Everyone was suppressed by this aura and had no choice but to stop. Lin Yu and Ming Qintian were already stained with blood. At this moment, they stopped and each held one side as they watched the palace slowly appear in the world. At this moment, Lin Yu sensed something in his inner world that suddenly shook. It seemed to be related to the emergence of the tomb of the green wood utmost being. Everyone felt like they were stuck in a swamp, unable to move at all. The origin item of the throne appeared in Ming Qingtian's hand. A supreme aura was released, protecting all the mysterious race. At this moment, the tomb exploded with endless vitality, and a primeval forest grew here. Especially around the palace, there were ancient trees that seemed to reach the clouds. They were like the legendary Jianmu that connected heaven and earth. Everyone was pulled into the palace by the vines of order. This place became silent. Everyone had disappeared, be it their corpses or anything else. It seemed like no one had ever stepped into this place. The grass was green, and the water was flowing. Lin Yu appeared in an unknown place. He could see the bronze sky above him, and a huge sun that was filled with runes hung in the sky. The grass below was thriving, and it was unknown how many cycles it had gone through. The bottom was covered with withered branches and rotten leaves. Lin Yu stepped on it. Rustling sounds became the only sound in this place. At this moment, the origin flame appeared on Lin Yu's shoulder. It seemed to have sensed the supreme Tao law's aura here, and it was excited. This should be the tomb of the green wood utmost being. Lin Yu guessed as he looked at the surroundings. The origin flame was emitting a mysterious aura. It was like a flaming tentacle that absorbed the Tao law's aura in this place into its body. The Tao law of wood gradually appeared in its body. However, as it continued to carve the Tao law here, its body gradually couldn't take it anymore, and that state appeared again. The origin flame had no choice but to stop carving in its dissatisfaction. Lin Yu walked in this world and did not see anyone else. This place was extremely quiet, without any living beings. There were only ancient trees and strange flowers blooming. Occasionally, streams could be seen. Lin Yu came to the side of a stream and scooped up a handful of water. There was a thick Dao law spreading out from it. Could this be an inner world of the green wood utmost being in the past? Lin Yu guessed. Now that he had opened up the 12th level of his inner world, he was extremely sensitive to the aura of his inner world. Chapter 1329. Everything here seemed to be formed by the Tao laws. However, they had already condensed into physical object. The origin flame bounced on Lin Yu's shoulder as it transmitted a ripple through its consciousness, acknowledging Lin Yu's thoughts. The scarecrow appeared in Lin Yu's hands. This was the object that had transmitted a ripple before entering this place. Right now, the scarecrow seemed to be pointing in a direction. Is the east where the corpse of the utmost being green wood is? Lin Yu looked at the scarecrow in his hands. He had not expected that the scarecrow would have such a deep connection with the utmost being green wood that it could sense the direction of the corpse of the utmost being green wood right now. There was no way Lin Yu would hand the corpse of the utmost being green wood over to the hands of the mysterious beings. Therefore, he looked to the east and started moving forward. This world was much vaster than Lin Yu had imagined. Furthermore, with the suppression of the Tao laws, Lin Yu could not use any of his methods right now. Right now, he was just like an ordinary person. He could only rely on the power of his battle body to move forward on the ground. Just like that, 10 years passed. Lin Yu looked like he had gone through a lot of vicissitudes. Even though the life force here was abundant, there was an ancient feeling to it that could affect one's state of mind. If this were to go on, the people here might just treat him as an ordinary person and end their lives here. Lin Yu had a strong will and was naturally unaffected. It was just that his battle body seemed to have been baptized by the passage of time, as a few strands of white hair started to appear on his temples. In these 10 years, the origin flame had undergone a transformation as well. Right now, he had already inscribed a small portion of the Tao laws of wood. Even though the power of the Tao laws here was strong, it did not touch upon the origin source. If he wanted to inscribe the complete Tao laws of wood, he would have to continue to delve deeper. At the very least, Lin Yu knew that he was heading in the right direction. Along the way, Lin Yu had no idea how many mountain ranges and rivers he had traversed. The scenery in front of him was still the same, as if there was no end in sight. However, the scarecrow in Lin Yu's hands was emitting an increasingly strong aura. Lin Yu's overall direction wasn't wrong. He was heading towards the corpse of the utmost being green wood. 20 years passed like this. In front of him was a misty place, with pine trees growing on the cliffs below them. Every stream flowed past. A thatched hut appeared in front of him. The walls were made of bamboo and vines, giving off a sense of vicissitude. It was unknown how long it had existed. Lin Yu headed in that direction. At this moment, the scarecrow's body gradually became hot, revealing strong fluctuations. He followed Lin Yu to the straw hut. There's a thatched cottage. Lin Yu looked at the plaque. There were 4 large words written on it. There was a thatched hut. It really was a thatched hut. The scarecrow broke away from Lin Yu's hand. He hovered in front of the door. A rune mark appeared on the scarecrow's body, emitting a supreme aura. The same rune mark appeared in front of the door as well. There was a seal on it that could only be opened by the scarecrow. If anyone else were to come here without the scarecrow, they wouldn't be able to enter unless they had the power of an utmost being to destroy the seal. Lin Yu could only sigh at his coincidences. The reason why he could come here was because he could obtain the corpse of an utmost being from the mysterious race. Lin Yu entered. All of a sudden, the stars shifted. The scarecrow appeared in Lin Yu's hands once more. However, he seemed to be in another world. He had arrived before the ancient history books. This was a small town. Occasionally, there would be children passing through the street. On the streets, there was an endless stream of people and carriages. It was extremely bustling. Lin Yu entered. It was as though he really existed in this town. However, no one could see him. At this moment, he was a transparent person. He could sense and see the scene here, but he couldn't interfere. The power in his body seemed to have returned as well. At this moment, the time and space Dao laws were spreading out continuously, resisting the supreme aura that was being emitted. He stood there and looked at the scene of the small town. The small town was similar to the buildings in the universe. However, the differences were indescribable. Lin Yu seemed to be guided by something and came to a shabby alley. Here, sewage was flowing everywhere. At the end of the alley, there were two children who were digging through the garbage. He didn't know what they were looking for. Is this the memory of the utmost being Qing Mu back then? Lin Yu asked slowly. He saw one of the children who was no more than 5 or 6 years old. He was filthy and had a scarecrow under his armpit. The way it was made was simple and crude. However, the little boy seemed to treat it like a treasure. He couldn't bear to dirty it on the garbage heap. Instead, he held it under his armpit and wrapped it in rags, leaving only his head exposed. "Brother, I found it," the little boy said in surprise. In his hand there was half a moldy bun. As for the slightly older child, his face was pale and weak. He even coughed from time to time. He was trying his best to hide the blood that he coughed out from time to time. He carefully wiped the blood on the rotten wood of the garbage heap. "Little Qing is really great," the slightly older boy said with a smile. "I hope there's still some meat. It would be best if we could find half a roasted chicken like last time." The little boy was hopeful. He handed the steamed bun to his elder brother and searched even harder, not caring about the dirt on his body. The little boy's brother seemed to be a little weak. He seemed to be terminally ill. He was as thin as a match and there was no color on his face. However, before the two of them could continue searching, this was the back door of a rich family. Many unwanted things were piled up here. The back door creaked. A few young men in luxurious clothes walked out. "I knew it. These two little beggars come here every day." A young man looked at the two boys with sarcasm. "That old man Yen hit us with a ruler because he can't read a few words. It just so happens that the sickly beggar is often taught by old man Yen. We can vent our anger on him." Someone discussed. The little boy and his brother got up and saw the people coming out of the back door. His brother came to the little boy and said with a frown, "Little Qing Mu, let's go." Obviously, it was not the first time they were bullied. Now that they saw these people, they could only retreat far away. His brother took the little boy and was about to leave. However, these people quickly stepped forward and blocked their way. Their eyes were full of mockery as they said, "You guys are sneaking around my house's back door. Did you steal something?" One of them questioned. "We didn't even enter the door. How can we steal your things?" The little boy stood up, feeling wronged. "Beggars can do anything," the man said with doubt. "Take off your clothes. We have to check carefully." Chapter 1330. "Don't be so overbearing," said the little boy's older brother. Although they were alone and had no one to rely on, they still had their dignity. How could they allow others to humiliate them? Although the little boy's elder brother looked sickly, he stood upright and stood in front of the little boy, shielding him from the attack. "Haha, you dare to disobey us?" The young man laughed. Following that, the little boy's older brother was beaten up until his nose and face were swollen and blood flowed from his mouth and nose. He did not beg for mercy at all. He laid on the little boy's body and used his body to protect the little boy. Only when they were tired from the beating did they enter the door in a dispirited manner. "Big brother, are you all right?" The little boy wept as he wiped the blood off his older brother. He supported his older brother and returned home. Air leaked out from the broken straw hut. The little boy placed his older brother on a wooden plank that could barely be called a bed. There was no bedding on it, only a thick layer of straw. Lin Yu also followed him here. He already knew that this place was the memories of Qing Mu, the utmost being. And he was that little boy. As the time passed, a year had passed. The little boy's older brother was saying goodbye to the little boy in front of the town. In front of him were some people dressed in the attire of the sect. Their eyes were filled with coldness. Qing Mu, don't be afraid. I will soon finish my studies and return, consoled the little boy. His eyes were filled with doting love. I won't cry. Big brother, properly cultivate in the Five Venoms sect. When the time comes, the bad guys won't dare to bully us, said the little boy firmly with reddened eyes. His older brother gave the little boy a pouch of silver. Amidst the scolding of the people of the Five Venoms sect, the two of them bid farewell. Only when the sun set and his older brother's figure completely disappeared from the horizon did the little boy slowly return home. However, what he did not know was that his departure this time was actually an eternal farewell. The little boy's older brother was weak and sickly. He did not have much time left. The Five Venoms sect had only taken a fancy to his body. There were toxins in it that could be extracted. The little boy's older brother was refined into a puppet. After the little boy grew up, he was Qing Mu, the utmost being. By chance, he stepped into the path of cultivation. In the end, he pacified the Five Venoms sect. However, when he looked at his elder brother's rotting corpse, there was nothing he could do. Only the Scarecrow, who had always been by his side, spoke of his endless sorrow. In the end, the utmost being Greenwood rose to power in an unstoppable manner. In less than 1,000,000 years, he stepped into the paramount realm and gained enlightenment of the supreme Tao laws. His entire life was filled with bitterness. His true love was also in the heavenly tribulation when he achieved the Tao, in order to defend against his enemy. He didn't even hesitate to sacrifice his source energy to buy time for the utmost being Greenwood. Lin Yu, who was standing at the side, also looked solemn. Before Qing Mu attained the Tao, he suffered endless suffering. In the end, he perished in the land of origin in order to protect the living beings of the universe. He had never lived for himself. The happiest time of his life was probably the time he spent with his true love and the time he spent with his elder brother when he was young. Ever since the utmost being Greenwood had stepped into the origin ground, everything had changed. Lin Yu exited the sealed memory world of the utmost being Greenwood as well. However, he was unable to calm his emotions for a long time. At this moment, the scene within the straw hut was revealed. The bed that was made up of wooden planks and the straw on it didn't seem to have changed at all. As for this scarecrow, it was something that the elder brother of the utmost being Greenwood had casually woven from the straw on the bed. There was a figure seated cross-legged on it. It was the utmost being Greenwood. However, there was no longer any trace of life in him. In fact, there was even a rotting stench coming from him. Right now, in the great battle with the mysterious race, his body was tainted as well. However, there was something in his heart that made him choose to return to this place. When Lin Yu looked at the corpse of the utmost being Greenwood, his heart was filled with a myriad of emotions. The living beings of the past had let down the utmost being Greenwood way too much. Even if he were to fall right now, no one would remember him. Lin Yu bowed down to the utmost being Greenwood thrice. The essence fire did not inscribe the Tao laws of the wood in front of the utmost being Greenwood. Instead, it headed outside the straw hut. Senior Greenwood, your corpse must not fall into the hands of the mysterious race. Therefore, I'm sorry for the offense, Lin Yu said slowly. This was the place that the utmost being Greenwood had been concerned about for his entire life. Lin Yu did not wish for the corpse of the utmost being Greenwood to leave this place. However, in reality, he did not know when the mysterious race would be able to find this place. He did not know what methods they had left behind to take away the corpse of the utmost being Greenwood. If it were to fall into the hands of the mysterious race, they might be able to create yet another utmost being. This would undoubtedly be an unimaginable calamity for the entire universe. Lin Yu came to the entrance of the straw hut. At this moment, the scarecrow seemed to have understood Lin Yu's intentions. Lin Yu wanted to take this entire place away and move it to another place. The Tao laws of this place were starting to dissipate gradually. The essence fire appeared on Lin Yu's shoulders. The Tao laws of wood within it were infused onto Lin Yu's body. There was no movement at all. Lin Yu kept the entire place within a radius of 100 miles into his inner world. A horrifying pressure surged over. Lin Yu could feel that his inner world seemed as though it could no longer withstand this pressure. It was crumbling apart and cracking apart continuously. Eventually, Lin Yu had no choice but to move it into the inner world that he had created in his previous life. This was the only way to make things much better. After he was done, a gigantic crater was formed here. 100 miles of land was reduced to nothingness. A desolate aura shrouded the entire place. Lin Yu sighed. Back in the day, the utmost beings had made great contributions. It was just that after they died, they were so desolate that even their corpses could not rest in peace. Without the suppression of the Tao laws of the utmost being green wood, this world was gradually heading towards destruction. Right now, it was no longer suppressing the cultivators. Lin Yu used the Tao laws of spacetime and walked out of this place. Not long after Lin Yu left, Ming Qingtian and the others had arrived as well. Looking at the place that had turned into ruins, he could not help but frown. The people of the mysterious race could not think of anyone who could take away the corpse of an utmost being. Even after countless years, the corpse of an utmost being still exuded a horrifying aura. Even an utmost weapon might not be able to suppress it. Could it be that those people in the ancient city also have some sort of weapon that can suppress the corpse of an utmost being? Chen Chen frowned. However, Chen Chen's ancestor was once someone of the universe lineage. He knew many secrets, including the situation of the ancient city. It was impossible for the people in the ancient city to bring along utmost weapons. Even if they did, it would be difficult for them to take away the corpse of an utmost being. The mysterious race had made ample preparations. They knew that the utmost being green wood had been injured by the throne and had been corroded. They had brought along mysterious soil and coffins from their ancestral ground that could take away the corpse of an utmost being and suppress that aura. However, they had been lost in this world for many years. Although they could vaguely sense it, it had already been taken away by Lin Yu. Furthermore, they did not know who had taken it away. Chapter 1331. Someone from the strange race made a move. He was trying to reverse time, wanting to know if the people in the ancient city had gotten their hands on it. As far as they knew, the ancient city knew nothing about this place, and was still at the periphery of the world. Creak, a terrifying shockwave swept over. The strange race, a member of the royal race with a unique innate mystic skill, was cracking all over at this moment. Ming Qingtian made a move and stabilized his body that was on the verge of destruction. He said, "There's an aura of a supreme being here. All the secrets of the heavens have been concealed." Everyone felt a lingering fear in their hearts. The world here was collapsing. The strange race had no choice but to retreat. As for the people in the ancient city, they had already retreated. They saw Lin Yu, who was about to leave. Tian Yi stepped forward and said, "Brother Lin, please don't be too bothered by what happened earlier on." Lin Yu's strength was obvious to all. Everyone fell silent. If not for Lin Yu's final move in the tomb of the Supreme Being, perhaps everyone in the ancient city would have died here. "Lin Yu, I'm sorry." Yu stepped forward and bowed slightly to express her apology. "I was the one who judged you with my own yardstick." Her attitude was sincere. Lin Yu merely looked at Yu indifferently. He thought of the corpse of the green wood utmost being in his inner world. He needed to bring it to the ancient city. Otherwise, if he was sensed by the strange race alone, he might be in danger. A long sword appeared in Yu's hand. With a flick of her finger, it pierced through her shoulder, causing fresh blood to gush out. Her attitude of admitting her mistake was sincere. Lin Yu did not care about it anymore. Seeing that Lin Yu had no intention of leaving, the ancient city frowned. Everyone from the ancient city frowned as well. We haven't found the corpse of the utmost being green wood. Could it have been obtained by the mysterious race? Everyone's expression turned solemn. This was one of the reasons why they were here. Out of the dozens, only 20 or so were left. In fact, some of them did not even have a corpse left. Obviously, other than Lin Yu, who was holding the scarecrow, the others were all teleported to the same place. I've already received the corpse of the utmost being green wood. Lin Yu replied indifferently. What? Everyone in the ancient city was shocked beyond words. They didn't expect that they couldn't sense Lin Yu's aura in that world. To think that he would be the first to receive the corpse of the utmost being greenwood. This was great news for ancient city. Their sacrifice was not in vain. Someone's eyes were filled with tears. After experiencing life and death, their feelings for each other had quickly warmed up. Now, they were mostly in awe of Lin Yu. They no longer had the prejudice they had in the past. Now is not the time to start a war. Let's leave the forgotten grounds first, Tianyi said. Retrieving the corpse of the utmost being was the reason why they were here. The war with the strange race was secondary. Although some people's eyes were filled with killing intent, their eyes were filled with killing intent. However, they knew that the strange race was way too strong. After developing for countless of years, their foundation was unimaginable. Apart from Tianyi and a few others, there was no one else who could match up to them. Furthermore, based on Tianyi's understanding, these kings weren't all of the strange race. In fact, they didn't even make up half of the strange race. However, Tianyi didn't tell anyone. He was afraid that they would fall into despair because of this. Before the strange race came out, everyone left the forgotten grounds. Following the departure of everyone from ancient city, the strange race had appeared. Seems like they have beaten us to it, Ming Qingtian said slowly. However, there wasn't a single trace of disappointment in his eyes. The only thing he lamented about was the fact that he didn't get to fight to his heart's content with Lin Yu. Now that the martial king of our race has been revived, it's time to put pressure on ancient city. With an army at our borders, the day of unification is just around the corner. Someone said to Ming Qingtian. That living being of the human race by the name of Lin Yu has a huge secret on him. We can report it to the upper echelons and obtain it. Due to the fact that the green-robed man had taken over in Tianshu's body, he had a special ability to sense things and auras in the universe. At this moment, his eyes were cold as he slowly opened his mouth to speak. Ming Qingtian stared into the distance as well. He recalled a prophecy that he had received from an utmost being of the strange race who was proficient in prophecies in the past. The departure of the strange race. Everyone from ancient city was on their way back as well. After a few decades, everyone had finally returned. Right now, Wang Tianjun and the others were on top of ancient city, welcoming everyone. Did you bring it back? The leader of Sword Sect asked his big senior brother. It's all thanks to Lin Yu. He didn't let us down. The big senior brother of Sword Sect replied. Without hiding anything, he told everyone about how they were trapped in the world and how Lin Yu had brought back the corpse of the utmost being Qing Mu alone. Everyone looked at Lin Yu with admiration in their eyes. Everyone arrived at the secret ground. Lin Yu opened up his inner world and placed the corpse of the utmost being Qing Mu in the deepest part of the secret ground. The plants here were growing at a speed visible to the naked eye. The upper echelons of ancient cities set up an altar. Everyone arrived and began to pay respects to the utmost being Qing Mu. Even some of the old monsters who were in deep slumber sensed this aura. Using their consciousness, they stood at the front and bowed slightly. This was a courtesy to the utmost being Qing Mu. After a long time, Lin Yu and Linli returned to the courtyard. After a few decades, Linli had aged quite a bit. Lin Yu took out the life force that he had gathered from the utmost being Qing Mu's inner world. This was the life force that Lin Yu had spent a few decades in the utmost being Qing Mu's inner world to gather in his body. Otherwise, Lin Yu wouldn't have been affected by the utmost being Qing Mu's inner world, and his hair wouldn't have turned white. That's very thoughtful of you. However, the matter of this world is no longer of any use to me. Linli rejected. Linli knew very well that his body should have died long ago. However, Lin Xian had forcefully used the power of time and space to pull his true spirit back, imprisoning it within his battle body. Actually, his true spirit had long decayed. Even if a true utmost being were to intervene, it would be hard to save him. Moreover, this was just life force that had been gathered. To other living beings, this was an unparalleled godly item. However, to Linli, it was no longer of any use. Is there really no way to salvage this? Lin Yu frowned. This was the only ancient of the 12 universes who had survived. He came from before the ancient history. Lin Yu didn't wish to see such an old man in his twilight years pass away in this era before he had even seen the true light of day. To be able to see the living beings of the 12 universes safe and sound, that's my wish. Linli chuckled. He knew what Lin Yu meant. At this moment, he laughed heartily. We are all looking up to the light on the shoulders of you, the deceased martyrs. Lin Yu said solemnly. Chapter 1332. Linli looked at Lin Yu with gratification. He smiled but didn't say anything. He just nodded slightly. However, Linli's heart was filled with worry. 10 years passed, but the ancient city was still the same. Under Linli's guidance, Lin Yu's understanding of cultivation had become more and more complete. Right now, his body was glowing with the special light of the Tao induction realm. The Tao induction realm was divided into persistence, kindness, emotion, body, and soul. There were all sorts of mysteries within it. Every person's breakthrough was different. At the later stages, no one's path was the same. One had to comprehend it on their own. However, Linli was still worried about Lin Yu's current level. To reach the highest level, Lin Yu had grasped too many Daos. It was possible that a huge problem would arise. However, this was a matter for the future. Right now, Lin Yu needed to think about how to break through the Tao induction realm. The late original God realm was already the Tao of heaven. However, the land of origin was too vast and mysterious. The Tao here was primitive and unfathomable. No one had ever merged with the Tao of heaven in the land of origin. There was a huge taboo. Tian-Yi seemed to have mastered this method. This was one of the reasons why you had attacked Lin Yu and wanted to drive him away. The talent that Lin Yu had displayed was too shocking. It was very likely that it would affect the process of Tian-Yi transforming into the Tao of heaven in the land of origin. Lin Yu was also pondering. However, he didn't have any thoughts about becoming the Tao of heaven in the land of origin. The origin of the 12 universes is very mysterious. If you were in control of the Tao of heaven in the 12 universes, perhaps it would be very good. However, after the Great Prehistoric War, the 12 universes no longer have enough resources to allow people to break through to that level. Linli said. The effects of the Great War in the past had been too great. As a result, the universe had yet to fully recover. Lin Yu nodded. However, he wasn't in a rush to break through. He needed to continue to stabilize in the original God realm. Although he could feel that he was standing at the peak of the original God realm, he still had a feeling that there was something he wasn't satisfied with. If the others knew that Lin Yu had such fighting competence at the original God realm, they would have been shocked. He felt that the 12 layers of the inner world he had opened up were not complete. He did not know what expression to make. The origin ground had endless fortunes. Not only were there relics left behind from the great battle of the past, but there were also shocking divine objects. Therefore, Lin Yu was not anxious. He was thinking to himself, wondering when he should leave the ancient city, search for the imperial pass established in the later generations. In his guess, Ancestor Lu should be there. There were no living creatures from the first universe in this ancient city. He had learned this from Linley. That imperial pass was established precisely in the first cosmos. Within it were immortals and deities from the Age of Legends. Lin Yu knew that he had seen the remains of the ancient heavenly court in the first universe. In the past, the first cosmos was adjacent to the realm sea. There were countless experts there. They had the strength to establish imperial pass. This was something to be expected. However, there was an endless distance between the ancient city and imperial pass, in the land of origin of the suppression, in another part of the cosmos, close to realm sea. It took a long time to reach the original God realm. Lin Yu was not in a hurry to find Ancestor Lu. He wanted to wait until he broke through to the Tao attraction realm before looking for Ancestor Lu. I hope Ancestor Lu has already gone to Imperial Pass. Lin Yu had seen the terror of the realm sea. When Ancestor Lu entered the realm sea, he was only at the original God realm. There were many dangers within. Even if Ancestor Lu controlled the realm sea, the ancient path opened up by those who came before would still be extremely dangerous. In the following few years, Linley informed Lin Yu, and then left the ancient city. It seemed like he was searching for something. However, as for what it was exactly, Linley did not tell him in detail. Although this was the case, Lin Yu knew that Linley should be searching for some divine object so that he could break through to the Tao attraction realm. Lin Yu had always been in seclusion in the secret land. The secret land was vast, with many auras and relics left behind by the highest beings, divided into many regions. The region Lin Yu was currently in was the ruined palace left behind by Ancestor Lin Xian. This place was extremely quiet. Without special permission, no one could enter. Lin Yu sat there for 100 years. However, he still had no clue about the Tao attraction realm, even though the aura of the Tao attraction realm on his body was becoming denser and denser. However, Lin Yu's aura seemed to have reached a bottleneck. As expected, I haven't reached the end of the original God realm? Lin Yu said in a low voice. His body was surrounded by several Tao laws, emitting a terrifying aura. In the dusky secret land, he was like a primordial deity, without any ripples. There was nothing that could affect his emotions. Could it be because I haven't merged with the Tao? Lin Yu thought of a possibility. At this moment, a terrifying aura suddenly erupted from the ancient city. Even the wind and clouds were surging. The sky was surrounded by endless chaos. Its little ancestor Tian. He's trying to control the heavenly Tao of the land of origin. At this moment, the Pavilion Master of Azure Universe Pavilion was emotional. This was a major event since ancient times. If Tian could control the heavenly Tao of the land of origin, even if it was only a small part, it would still be unimaginable. In this world, they would no longer feel despair in resisting the anomalies. Even before ancient history, no one had ever tried to control the heavenly Tao of the land of origin. The first divine kings of the past universe were born at the beginning of creation. They controlled the heavenly Tao of their respective universes. Their power was already unimaginable. The land of origin was more than several times more vast than the universe. The heavenly Tao within was unfathomable. Endless chaotic chi surrounded the ancient city. Even the old monsters in slumber in the secret land were awakened at this moment. 4 experts who were close to decaying took action at this moment. They guarded the 4 corners of the ancient city and personally protected Tian. At this moment, Tian was already in the sky above the ancient city. His Tao laws of chaos were constantly communicating with the heavenly Tao of the world. Chaos divine lightning descended. It surrounded Tian-Yi. Tian-Yi's figure had already become hazy and impossible to see. It was as if he had already jumped out of the world. Endless auspicious clouds descended, enveloping the area within a radius of 100 miles around him. One could see that the heavenly Tao had materialized. True dragons and true phoenixes were circling around. Tian-Yi seemed to have become the master of the world. The phantoms of innate gods and demons appeared, worshipping him together. The void was trembling. At this moment, the heavenly Tao had turned into a stalk of grass. A supreme aura was revealed. It could slash the sun, moon, and stars, containing the truth of the great Tao. This was the heavenly Tao that had materialized in the land of origin. Now, it appeared above Tian-Yi's head. The four old monsters who had come into being were chanting Tao scriptures together, containing the essence of the world. The world was filled with the sound of chanting. The power of Tao scriptures was added to Tian-Yi's body. Everyone came out of seclusion and looked up at the sky, witnessing this prosperous era. They were about to see the birth of a big shot. Chapter 1333. At this moment, Lin Yu was also standing before the main hall. His expression was calm and indifferent. Now that he was looking at the strange phenomenon in the world, a different kind of realization was born in his heart. He was currently at a bottleneck. Now that he saw Tian-Yi controlling the heavenly Tao. Although he still had no signs of a breakthrough, he could still learn from this experience. Tian-Yi's breakthrough lasted for 3 years. The auras of the four old monsters who were on the verge of decay were still extremely blazing. The chanting never stopped. This was a technique left behind by the primal chaos back then. Now it was used on Tian-Yi. Allowing him to control the heavenly Tao of the origin ground had a huge effect. 5 years had passed. The strange phenomenon here had gradually subsided. All auras had dissipated. Tian-Yi appeared in the secret ground. It seemed like he had failed. A rain of light fell from the sky. The heavens collapsed and the earth cracked. The innate gods and demons were crying, as though they were sad about Tian-Yi's failure. At this moment, Tian-Yi's aura was gradually weakening. How terrifying was the heavenly Tao of the origin ground! It was not something that an original God realm cultivator could control completely. Everyone's mood became heavy. Tian-Yi was like a primitive meteor that had slid down, landing in the mystic ground. The four old monsters who had been born prematurely also appeared in the secret ground. Everyone had a feeling that Tian-Yi had failed. In the current world, who else could control the heavenly Tao of the origin ground? Everyone was filled with despair. Now, among the strange creatures, the sovereigns who had survived back then had gradually begun to recover. If no one in the ancient city had broken through to a higher realm, how could they resist? No one knew. A few days later, the old monsters who had been born prematurely arrived in the ancient city. His voice was as loud as a bell as he said, Tian-Yi has already begun to control the heavenly Tao of the origin ground. You don't have to worry. What? Tian-Yi succeeded? Someone exclaimed in shock. In the previous situation, it was obvious that he had failed. The heavens have blessed us living beings. Someone's eyes were filled with tears. They were paying their respects devoutly. How terrifying is the heavenly Tao of the origin ground! If one could control it all at once, who could do it? The old monster who had been revived prematurely said slowly. He dispelled everyone's worries. Tian-Yi needs to comprehend quietly for a period of time. After saying this, the old monster who had been revived prematurely disappeared from the ancient city. In the secret land, the four old monsters had solemn looks in their eyes. Right now, the radiance of Tao assimilation could be seen on Tian-Yi's body. The heavenly Tao of the land of origin is truly terrifying. The old monsters sighed. However, Tian-Yi had indeed succeeded in the first step. Apart from the Tao transformation aura, his aura had become extremely profound. It was as if he had already fused with the Tao, and there was no distinction between them. Now, we can only wait and see if Tian-Yi can make it through. The old monster sighed. Their own condition was also not good. Now that they had been born in advance, they had maintained their peak condition for the past few years. Clearly, their consumption was not low. They were all half-step utmost beings, and their statuses were frighteningly high. They fell into a deep slumber once again, turning into stone statues. No one knew when they would wake up. However, their auras continued to revolve around Tian-Yi, never leaving his side. Right now, Tian-Yi had already grasped the heavenly Tao of the origin lands. Although he had encountered a great problem, he had left behind some hope. Lin Yu sat cross-legged on the ground, wondering if he needed to return to the 12 universes and take control of the heavenly Tao there. However, this thought would obviously require a large amount of time. He had come to the land of origin from the realm sea. Even though he had taken a shortcut, it still took him several thousand years. If he were to return the way he came from now, or he would definitely need to spend even more time. Will I step onto the path of the strange race? Without comprehending the Tao laws, I will become the heavenly Tao and walk my own path? Lin Yu pondered. He fell into a state of Tao comprehension. Another 100 years had passed. The ancient city seemed to have quietened down. But right at this moment endless strange qi was surging. The sky was once again shrouded by the strange qi. The ancient city stood tall under the black fog, becoming the only checkpoint that guarded the world. At this moment, the old monsters in the secret ground all sensed this aura. Strange matter checkpoint. Amidst the endless black fog, a majestic man could be seen sitting on the throne. He was wearing battle armor, and his black hair was scattered. He had a demonic charm and wildness, and the aura on his body was extremely powerful. He gave off a feeling that he was the only one in the entire world. Beside him stood the descendants of the royal family respectfully. Several quasi-kings who were repelled back then were also there. Strange qi intertwined on their bodies. It made the entire ancient city shake. Some of the old monsters in the ancient city woke up in advance and came to the top of the ancient city. Looking at the throne above, their faces showed a dignified expression. Song Emperor. That old monster's origin was unknown, but he recognized the identity of the strange throne on the throne. One of the top 10 strange kings in the past, the strange king. Puff. Just the mention of the Song Emperor's name made the old monster spit out a mouthful of blood. Even the name of the king had become a taboo, and could not be mentioned. Everyone came to the top of the ancient city. Looking at the Song Emperor in the endless black fog, their faces could not help but show despair. They originally thought that there was still a period of time before the final battle. Who would have thought that at this moment, the mysterious king stage magnate would personally come to this place to lock him up? Today, the ancient city is broken. No one can stop the strange race from conquering. One of the quasi-kings said. The aura of despair shrouded the entire ancient city. Now, the first emperor was at the critical moment of his recovery. In the ancient city, who could stop him? Even the old monsters who had just awakened were on the verge of collapsing at the mention of the name of a throne magnate. The difference between a half-step paramount and the king of the paramount was not just a few millimeters. It was a chasm that was hard to describe. "Is the heavens going to kill us?" someone murmured. They could not even think about it in their hearts. The magnate on the strange throne was so terrifying. Just by imagining his appearance in their minds, they would explode and die. Lin Yu was currently in the secret ground. The shroud in his inner world began to shake violently. It was not under Lin Yu's control. Bringing Lin Yu with him, they appeared on top of the ancient city. At this moment, Lin Yu's body was strengthened by the shroud, and he was at the half-step paramount realm. He could use more than half of his strength. A blazing aura exploded. The ancient city was covered with a layer of protective barrier, blocking the aura of the Tsang Emperor. Only then would more people not be killed. Paramount Shroud. Everyone was no longer suppressed by the aura, and they felt much better. At this moment, Lin Yu stood at the front with his hands behind his back. His figure was located in the void. Both his figure and the heavenly fortune were shrouded by the illusion. I don't know if he's affected by me or the deceased Shroud Supreme. Chapter 1334. The utmost being that was pierced by my sword back then? The Tsang Emperor asked coldly. Of all the enemies that were defeated by me, the only one left is Shroud Cloth. How ironic. Do you still want to fight me? He spoke again. Back then, wasn't it you thrones that ganged up on us? Do you think our utmost being would have died? The old monster spoke. He knew many secrets, and he revealed them at this moment. All the living beings in the ancient city were enraged. The era of Shroud Cloth's utmost being was the most tragic era. All the utmost beings had passed away, and he was the only one left to fight against the strange beings. In the end, he died under the siege. His true spirit was destroyed by the Tsang Emperor. His corpse was brought back by the utmost being, leaving behind endless sorrow. Lin Yu, who was under the protection of Shroud Cloth, remained silent. All the living beings in the ancient city were enraged. Looking at the strange beings, everyone was filled with fighting spirit, and they wanted to rush out and kill the enemies. The old monster stopped the restless living beings in the ancient city. His face was still solemn. Right now, even though Lin Yu had brought the burial cloth with him, he was only at the level of a half-step utmost being. Although he might be stronger than these old monsters who were nearing the end of their lives, it did not change the outcome of the battle at all. Lin Yu also realized this point. He was under the protection of Shroud Cloth. Right now, Lin Fan could clearly sense that a throne that could fight against an utmost being possessed a power that was absolutely horrifying. He was already in the forbidden zone. But by the looks of it now, everyone in the ancient city had no way out. A broadsword appeared in the hands of the Tsang Emperor. Without leaving his seat, he struck out casually. A huge crack appeared on the seal above the ancient city. It seemed like it could break at any moment. Do you strange beings dare to come in? The revived old monster in the ancient city said slowly. Within the secret grounds of the ancient city, there were many methods left behind by the utmost beings. This was the final trump card of the ancient city. But if the Tsang Emperor came alone, the ancient city still had the ability to fight back. You're smart. I haven't recovered to my peak state yet. But to kill ants like you, I don't need to enter the ancient city. The Tsang Emperor said slowly. The aura of his body began to spread out. A strange aura enveloped the entire ancient city. Although the Azure Emperor had yet to recover to his peak state, he was still a magnate among the sovereigns. His means were unimaginable. The Azure Emperor's methods had penetrated through the restrictions and entered the ancient city. Even the Shroud couldn't completely suppress it. After all, he was facing a truly revived sovereign. As for the Shroud, it only had remnants of supreme Tao marks left. The bodies of countless living beings began to decay continuously, turning into sand and dispersing with the wind. Even the old monster, who had taken out the heaven-refining gourd, was helpless against such a strange technique. We can only solve it from the source. The old monster's aura became piercingly cold under the support of the heaven-refining pot. The heaven-refining flask was a supreme artifact in the chaos, and it was a grand mist artifact. Right now, it was erupting with unparalleled power. It caused the entire ancient city to stand in the midst of chaos. However, one could still see that the living beings within the ancient city were dying continuously. Countless people were wailing. The power of a sovereign was simply unimaginable. If this continued for a long time, this place would turn into a ghost town without the need for the strange creatures to make a move. Apart from those slumbering old monsters and half-step sovereigns. There's no other way. We can only awaken the first emperor in advance. Many old monsters were awakened at this moment. Together, they wielded the heaven-refining gourd, trying to resist the aura of the Azure Emperor. However, it was all to no avail. Even if we awaken the first emperor now, his cultivation realm hasn't fully recovered. There's nothing we can do. Lin Yu stood on the city wall at this moment. His eyes were shining brightly. Under the support of the shroud, the 4 ancient words that he had mastered glowed and supported the ancient city. The 4 ancient words emitted an ancient aura, suppressing the ancient city. The ancient city that was in the midst of collapsing was stabilized. At the same time, it also slowed down the process of dying out. In just a short while, it was unknown how many creatures of the same generation as Lin Yu, or those who were slightly younger, had died. This was undoubtedly a huge blow to the ancient city. It would take an endless amount of time to recover. If the ancient city was destroyed, the universe wouldn't be spared. Lin Yu's figure became more and more dense. The shroud was also trembling. It seemed to have sensed the cries of the living beings. At this moment, it was emitting a residual heat here, ready to fight a great battle. Lin Yu was connecting with the Tao fruit of his previous life. Countless threads appeared between heaven and earth. The shroud was also exerting its power. It connected with the Tao fruit of Lin Yu's previous life and supported it on its own body. The Azure Emperor seemed to have sensed it too. At this moment, he looked at Lin Yu and said indifferently, "I didn't expect you to have 2 supreme auras in your body." However, he didn't know where the other supreme aura came from. His eyes were blazing, trying to deduce Lin Yu's origin. The road ahead is chaotic and unknown. Has it become a variable? He said slowly. However, he didn't show the slightest surprise. The Azure Emperor had experienced countless years and participated in the Black Calamity. He was already standing at the top of the strange race, an absolutely invincible existence. Even if he hadn't recovered to his peak, he still had an aura of disdain. If you don't become a king, you're just an ant. The king he spoke of was the supreme realm. In the end, the Tao fruit of Lin Yu's previous life appeared and became one with Lin Yu's body. Countless threads of karma appeared in the sky. The supreme aura spread out. Lin Yu is now standing at the supreme realm. The astonishment on the faces of the few awakened old monsters could not be any greater. Everyone saw hope. The threads of karma intertwined on Lin Yu's body. So it's that mysterious supreme who has mastered the Tao of karma. The Azure Emperor recognized the aura on Lin Yu's body. Lin Yu's previous life was extremely mysterious. His specific identity was unknown. It was as if he suddenly appeared and killed several sovereigns. However, he was severely injured in the end and disappeared. After the sovereigns deduced in the ancestral land, he was already dead. Now, his aura appeared again. The Azure Emperor gradually became interested. I didn't fight with you in the past. That's why you had the chance to kill so many sovereigns. I wonder if you can fight with me now with your incomplete aura. The Azure Emperor stood up. Heaven and earth are boundless. Only I, the Azure Emperor. The domineering aura was revealed. Lin Yu walked out of the ancient city and stood opposite the Azure Emperor. The threads of karma killed countless strange creatures. Chen Chen, Ming Qintian, and the others who came retreated into the distance. They stayed in the strange black fog and didn't dare to come closer. Chapter 1335. Countless strange creatures were killed by Lin Yu's aura at this moment. Outside the ancient city, only the Tsang Emperor and Lin Yu were left, facing off against each other in the sky. The strange black fog around Lin Yu started to dissipate, unable to get close to him. The strange black fog was born in the ancestral ground, and nothing could destroy it. And now, it started to shatter around Linyu, unable to recover. The Tsang Emperor wielded his broadsword, his black hair dancing in the wind. His body emitted an immortal aura, like a universe. His figure was majestic, and no signs of age could be seen. "You're the descendant who mastered the Tao of Karma." Although the Tsang Emperor couldn't deduce Lin Yu's identity, he could guess it now. "Yes," Lin Yu replied indifferently. His tone was filled with coldness and indifference. The conversation between the two touched on the taboo. The place became chaotic, and no one knew what was going on. They could only feel the horrifying aura. Both of them attacked. The stone sword and the broadsword clashed continuously. The world was collapsing and tilting. The few old monsters could only use the heaven-refining flask to maintain the immortal ancient city. The ancient city, which was bigger than a world, couldn't withstand the shockwaves from the battle between the two supreme beings. Cracks started to appear on the walls. The seals left behind by the supreme beings started to erupt with all their might, temporarily maintaining the ancient city. Lin Yu was like an emperor who came from countless eras ago. He had experienced the vicissitudes of life, read the history of the ancient times, and now, he was here, bringing with him endless power. No one could see how the two of them attacked. Everyone could only feel the horrifying shockwave. They could already see the world collapsing, and the river of history of the origin ground surrounded the two of them. The immortal aura was revealed, and even the heavens and earth couldn't bury it. The battle between the two of them lasted for a long time. But they could clearly feel that the supreme aura emitted by Lin Yu was weakening. Two supreme auras, it's hard to resist. The faces of the old monsters in the ancient city turned serious. "Send the heaven-refining gourd up there and hand it over to Lin Yu." Someone was staking everything. However, the old monster stopped him. He shook his head under the terrifying aura and said, "We can't afford to lose the heaven-refining pot. If worse comes to worst, we'll just give up on the ancient city and return to the secret land." Even now, they still didn't believe in Lin Yu. Strange true blood sprinkled down from the sky. In the land of origin, huge craters were formed everywhere, comparable to a world. "Lord Tsang is injured." Ming Qingtian and the others from the strange beast tribe were shocked. In their impression, the Tsang Emperor was an overlord among the sovereign stage. He had been undefeated throughout the ages, but now, he was actually injured and stained with blood. That was impossible. The terrifying energy waves were no longer there. Lin Yu appeared in front of the ancient city. His aura was fading away, and his blurry figure gradually returned to reality. The Tsang Emperor stood at the front. "My interest in you is piqued. Regardless of the supreme aura you exude, your talent alone is enough to stun others. The 12th level of the inner world." The Azure Emperor slowly spoke. Lin Yu didn't say anything. He returned to the ancient city. The two of them were evenly matched. "If I'm at my peak, you won't be able to live." The Tsang Emperor spoke again with a domineering tone. "If I had the same amount of time before the ancient history, I wouldn't even need to fight." Lin Yu's words were filled with confidence. This was a strong confidence. Lin Yu didn't have enough time to grow. Now, he was the one who took the lead and spoke those words. His words were filled with confidence and dominance. If he had grown up before the ancient history, he wouldn't have cared about the Tsang Emperor at all. Everyone was shocked by Lin Yu's words. He was facing a sovereign sage who had survived until now and whose hands were stained with the blood of more than one sovereign stage. "Now that your power has begun to fade, who else in the ancient city can stop my tribe?" Within the black fog, another sovereign had appeared. His powerful aura caused the heaven and earth to tremble. The Tao laws began to retreat, unable to get close to him. He had a head of white hair and exuded an aura that could destroy everything. "Greetings, King Yu." All the members of the strange tribe knelt on the ground and paid their respects sincerely. King Yu's expression was extremely cold. He looked at Lin Yu without a trace of emotion. Indeed, Lin Yu's aura had begun to fade. Due to Lin Yu's realm, the Tao fruit from his previous life couldn't last for a long time. However, he knew that the Tsang Emperor was injured now. He wondered how King Yu was doing now. Even so, who else in the ancient city could resist two sovereigns? It's not time to harvest the fruit in the cage, King Yu said. His words were directed at the Tsang Emperor, but it was clearly transmitted to everyone's ears. If your ancient city wants to survive, there's a way. Hand over the person you just fought, the Tsang Emperor said. Obviously, he was interested in Lin Yu. Everyone in the ancient city fell silent. At the same time, a sense of helplessness rose in their hearts. Under the suppression of the auras of the two sovereigns, many creatures in the ancient city perished without any warning. They couldn't withstand this aura. Wang Tianjun was also on the city wall. At this moment, his face was full of helplessness. Lin Yu's aura had completely faded. The two sovereigns were like two demonic mountains, pressing down on everyone's heart. Why don't we hand over Lin Yu in exchange for a short period of peace? Someone suggested. There was no other way now. With two sovereigns appearing, even the secret ground would find it difficult to resist. The Sword Sect's ancestor said, "Don't believe the words of the strange tribe. If they could attack the ancient city now, they would have already done so. Why should we hand over the hostage?" The Sword Sect was born with pride. When they heard the Tsang Emperor's words, they were already burning with anger. Lin Yu is the hero who fought against the strange tribe. If we hand him over now, won't the people in the ancient city be disappointed? The Azure Universe Pavilion's ancestor also spoke at this moment. Lin Yu's performance was obvious to all. Have you forgotten that Tian-Yi is now at the critical moment of controlling the Origin Land's heavenly Tao? If we force a war, what if Tian-Yi in the secret ground is affected? The Wang family's ancestor said. When these words came out, everyone fell silent. Tian-Yi is the hope of the entire ancient city, and even the future generations. Even if some people are sacrificed to protect Tian-Yi, it doesn't matter. The Wang family's ancestor spoke again. Lin Yu listened to these old monsters' discussion with a cold expression on his face. He was protecting the ancient city, but in the end, this was the outcome. We can't delay any longer. The Wang family's ancestor reminded. The creatures in the ancient city were dying continuously. This was the sovereigns pressuring the ancient city. How sad and lamentable. If I still had power now, the ancient city wouldn't exist, Lin Yu said coldly. He was now standing alone on one side of the city wall. How dare you? Even if you temporarily protected the ancient city, do you think you can say such disgraceful words? The Wang family's ancestor scolded. Right now, the shroud had already dimmed. Lin Yu couldn't withstand the aura of a half-step utmost being. Blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth, and his body almost cracked. All right, hand over Lin Yu. The Azure Universe Pavilion's ancestor sighed. This was out of consideration for Tian-Yi. Lin Yu, it's been hard on you. For the sake of the ancient city and the future of the universe, you can only be sacrificed. What a good, I can only be sacrificed. Lin Yu laughed coldly. His voice was bone-chilling. Chapter 1336. His aura was extremely weak right now. However, in the face of a half-step utmost being, his expression did not change at all. He was not afraid at all. Lin Yu looked at these old monsters of the ancient city. Everyone present was silent. Facing Lin Yu, who had just resisted the Great Terror, they all felt guilty in their hearts. However, there was no other way now. The old ancestor of the Wang family directly took action and imprisoned Lin Yu. The laws of the Tao turned into shackles. Right now, Lin Yu's strength had already started to fade. Facing the attacks of a half-step utmost being, There was no way he could do anything. Today's strange situation was filled with doubts. It was very likely that they had been betrayed by someone and knew that the first emperor could not wake up now. Only the upper echelons of the ancient city knew about this. However, these were not things that Lin Yu was concerned about right now. His eyes were filled with endless killing intent towards the old ancestor of the Wang family. It's a pity that the strength in my body has already faded. Otherwise, I wouldn't mind killing you with my sword, Lin Yu said coldly. He looked towards the strange race. Everyone in the ancient city could see the disappointment in Lin Yu's eyes. The old ancestor of the Wang family merely snorted coldly. He held the heaven-refining flask in his hands and locked Lin Yu up with God-order chains. The shroud was also taken away by the heaven-refining flask. When he wanted to take away the stone sword from Lin Yu's deep consciousness, the heaven-refining flask trembled. It was as though it had seen something extremely terrifying. Before Lin Yu used the stone sword, it had always been kept in the flask to be nurtured. Right now, even the heaven-refining flask would be suppressed by that aura. The old ancestor of the Wang family wanted to take away everything including the God King's order. However, he did not succeed. Lin Yu was chased out of the city. There were people who could not bear to see this. They could see the coldness in Lin Yu's eyes. By doing this, we might be able to exchange for a temporary peace. However, if Lin Yu were to throw himself into the darkness, there might be a throne magnate in the future. The old ancestor of the Tsangyu Pavilion sighed. From Lin Yu's performance, he could already see that kind of talent. We owe the 12 universes too much. The Sword Sex Patriarch sighed faintly. Looking at Lin Yu's footsteps, he couldn't help but feel sad. He felt that it was unfair for this young man. However, in order to let Tian-Yi gain complete control over the heavenly Tao, there was no other way to hold back the mysterious creatures. Very well, in exchange for 1,000 years of peace. The Tsang Emperor smiled. Ming Qingtian and the others appeared. The black chains once again bound Lin Yu. The sovereign throne had left behind the power of the great path on it, making it difficult for it to move. Everyone on the city wall watched as Lin Yu was escorted away until they could no longer see him. What will Lin Li say when the time comes? The old ancestor of the Tsangyu Pavilion asked with a frown. The 12 universes were not to be trifled with. Lin Li had left for 200 years. If he returned and learned that Lin Yu had been sent to the mysterious creatures, who could stop him if he went berserk? Just say that Lin Yu died in battle against the mysterious creatures. The old ancestor of the Wang family said slowly. Erase everyone's memories. He used his most powerful technique. Bao Jiaming stood to the side and gritted his teeth. He definitely couldn't forget what had happened today. He used a Dharma artifact to seal his deepest memories. He would wait for Lin Li to return and settle the score with the old ancestor of the Wang family. Brother Lin, this is the only thing I can do for you. Bao Jiaming closed his eyes. The sky was filled with light rain. It was clear that Lin Yu had been given to the mysterious creatures in exchange. Lin Yu was now being driven across the territory of the mysterious creatures. His face was incomparably calm. He's very strong. On the path of cultivation, he's very steady. Old ancestor of the Tsang family, why don't we use him as a sparring partner for our heaven's pride? Ming Qingtian said. In the previous battle, he couldn't determine a winner with Lin Yu. Now that Lin Yu had come to the mysterious creatures, he could make up for his regret. In the territory of the mysterious creatures, it was different from what Lin Yu had imagined. This place was no longer filled with black gas. On the contrary, the buildings here were made of gray stones. There were also plants growing in them. However, the difference between this place and the origin ground was that the Tao here was different. It seemed more primitive, as if it was the origin of the world. This was also one of the reasons why the mysterious creatures were so strong. It was very prosperous. This was the royal city of the mysterious creatures. It was incomparably huge and could be compared to a great world. One could see the strength of the original god realm here. At this moment, they could feel the different aura from Lin Yu. They were all eyeing him covetously. "You will regret what you said," Lin Yu said indifferently. Now, he had arrived at the mysterious creature's territory. Their first ancestor and the countless living beings in the 12 universes had died in the hands of this mysterious creatures. Their hatred was irreconcilable. He couldn't leave for the time being. He might as well start a massacre here. These people from the strange race were all terrified of him. Sitting on the throne, the Tsang family's face was calm. He executed a Dao art and sealed Lin Yu's cultivation base. Including the inner world of the 12th level, all of it was sealed. Lin Yu felt the power in his body diminishing. He was under an unimaginable suppression. His cultivation base was too low. Even if he had his 3 lives Dao fruit in the 12th level, he couldn't unleash its power. He could only passively let the Tsang family seal his power. "Why aren't you kneeling when you see the throne?" one of the royal family members scolded. "Do you think you have the right to be arrogant now?" The royal family member continued to speak. The ridicule in his eyes was undisguised. "Prisoner, kneel down." A quasi-king on the side of the Tsang family member scolded. Lin Yu was forced to kneel down by a terrifying pressure. Lin Yu was forced to kneel down. One could see that just the pressure alone was enough to crush Lin Yu's body. However, he remained standing, unwavering. "I am the divine king of the 12 universes. You are not qualified," Lin Yu said indifferently. Blood was flowing out from the corner of his mouth. His organs seemed to have been crushed. "The divine king of the 12 universes?" The quasi-king smiled. Then, he pointed a finger and Lin Yu's leg exploded. Even so, Lin Yu only staggered. He didn't fall. Now that Lin Yu was in the midst of the mysterious creatures, he wasn't afraid even if he was alone. His eyes were sharp. He looked in the direction of the quasi-king calmly. However, those who knew Lin Yu well knew that the calmer he was, the more terrifying he was. "Old ancestor, please stay your hand," Ming Qingtian said. "He is my strongest trial stone. Perhaps we can learn something useful from his cultivation. When the time comes, it will be much easier to conquer the creatures." Ming Qingtian respected the strong. Among his peers, he valued Lin Yu. It was a rare sight even among the strange race. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.